Yo, what's good, everybody? Welcome to Rec League. It's the podcast where sports, culture, and conversation collide. I'm Sammy Smith. I'm your host here with my man Duke the Scoop, Kennington Lloyd Smith III. Today, we're just going to kick things off just by introducing ourselves, our journeys, our passions, and why this is the start of something special. Duke, I'm gonna go ahead and throw things to you, man. Who are you? What do you do? How do we end up here?
Oh man, I appreciate the alley-oop. My name is Philip Dukes, aka Dukes D Scoop. Um, Lifelong sports fan, formerly recruiting analyst, writer at 24/7 Sports / CBS Sports. I covered the Auburn beat for a couple of years. I parlayed that success into a national analyst role, high school analyst role with On Three last year, where I had a show called the 5 Star Flex. Did a year there, and now I've independently. I'm doing my own thing. This is part of my own thing where we are just kind of. I think the title of this show is respectfully unemployed, and I think that's where I'm kind of where I am right now. Where um, I wanted to stay away from the major jobs at this point. I know that's a huge gamble, but I wanted to give myself an opportunity to try to do some things, and it's been working well for me. Personally, I'm from College Park, Georgia. Grew up on the south side of Atlanta. Banneker High School. Also went to Tri-Cities and Westlake, and a lifelong sports fan. And yeah, that's me in a nutshell, man. Huge music fan of the culture, and I'm just glad to be able to be with you guys. All right, but I sound like I'm in a Baptist church, like we got some new members, y'all. All right, no, but yeah, man, no, that's it, man.
All right, Ken, what about you, man?
Yeah, so respectfully unemployed is a very timely title for the topic of this episode. Obviously, we're kicking things off, and that's kind of where we're both at. We're both people that are prominent in the media space. We're trying to do our thing, but at the moment, we don't have a major conglomerate or a media company behind us. Respectfully, though, so. I'm Kennington Lloyd Smith III. Most people call me Kenny or Ken. If you know me outside of the media space, you might know me as DJ Octane. Like Duke said, I'm an avid music lover. I'm a DJ of all different types. I'm nice too. We're going to get into that as we develop into the show. But from Fayetteville, Georgia, went to Whitewater High School, went to the University of Georgia, where I graduated in 2017. Since then, I've been covering high school sports in South Carolina in the upper state, did that for a couple of years, won some awards, parlayed that into covering the Iowa Hawkeyes for the Des Moines Register for a couple of years. And then most recently spent the last 2 years in Alabama with the Athletic / New York Times covering the Alabama beat. So I feel like I was there for the 2 most interesting years, at least in my lifetime, of Alabama football, which was the last year of Nick Saban and the first year of Cam Moore. Most recently, parted ways with the Athletics. So at the moment, I'm unemployed, but with respect. So still out here trying to find myself behind, a major still, job searching and doing the whole thing. But also, in a conversation that I had with Duke, he was just kind of telling me this is an opportunity for me to step out and build something of my own and have something independent outside of working for a corporation. So while I am still on the job hunt, I'm really excited to be here building something, with Duke and with Sammy, who I've known since, man, we were teenagers. And,
Oh wow.
I'm sure he's going to get into his own backstory, but we've been talking about doing this for a long time and really just kind of feel like this was, ordained that we all kind of met together at this moment. And at this time, me and Duke got connected through a family friend. We've been talking about doing this for, a couple weeks now, and then, looped my boy Sammy in, and now, we're all boys, we're all family, and all kind of ties into the title of Rec League, where people come from all different walks of life and come together, and it's very communal, and we could talk about sports, we could talk about life, or we could talk about, pop culture things and things that are affecting, our everyday lives. So it's a little bit about me, and I'm excited to be here, and I think we're going to have a great show today, and I'm excited for people to continue to watch this progress, because we are going to, turn this into something that's pretty big.
Yeah, for sure, man. I'm excited for you guys to be here. I'm excited to be here. Like I said, I'm Sammy Smith. I've been in this industry basically since I could walk, man. My pops self-published a magazine when I was a kid, Entertainment and Sports Journal. I had a column in there when I was 8, 9 years old. So I was writing every month. Like Kenny said, like we met when we were teenagers. I think I was like 14, might have been 15 at the time. We went to this sports broadcasting camp in Atlanta, and we just kind of like clicked from there. So when he went to Georgia, I had no plans of going to school in state, and he kind of convinced me to go. So I graduated the year after him in 2018.
Okay.
And along the way, we did a lot of big things. Shout out UGA Elite, shout out Jamari. And then after my junior year, I got an internship at CBS Sports in the Features and Original Programming Department. I guess I did a good job because I ended up coming back after I graduated, and I've been with CBS going on 8 years now, if you count that internship. So I'm an associate producer in Features and Original Programming, and I'm also the writer for the NFL Today and some of our other studio shows. So, I've been kind of doing this thing for a while. And along the way, I've always really been excited to do my own stuff that, me and Kenny have talked about in the past. And, when this opportunity came about, he introduced me to Dukes, and now here we are. So, yeah, man, I'm really excited, man. I'm not fitting the theme of respectfully unemployed, but
I'm so glad you said that.
But I am respectfully employed. So
yeah, kids, do not just go do it because your friends are doing it.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Absolutely.
What your mama say? If your friends jump off a bridge, you gonna follow?
Right. No, stay where you are. We appreciative, man. Appreciate you spending time with us.
For sure, man. Look, we family now. You know what I'm saying? This is Rec League. We play cousins. Y'all know how we do this shit. So, so happy to be here. Happy to be here. Why don't you tell me a little bit about like how y'all met, like how y'all kind of linked? Just a little bit about like you guys' relationship.
Man.
Yeah. Well, I'll let you go, G. You can go first.
Man, really, man. Like I just think it's like Red League, right? It's like where when you hooping and like you kind of see somebody like, oh, bro, I like his game. And after a while, you play a couple of games against somebody and you see each other in pass, and then one day you might just stop each other and be like, hey, bro, where you from, bro? And that's kind of how I felt like it happened. You know what I mean? Like I think Andy Staples from the Athletic was a guy who kind of like helped me to the Athletic. He's at On3 now, but he came from the Athletic. He kind of helped me to the Athletic. And just when I started doing my research about the Athletic, I saw a young brother. I was like, oh man, like that's cold to me. You know what I'm saying? Like, cause there's not a lot of people who look like us in that space. So yeah, I think we had some mutual people in common. And then we had some familiarity before we saw each other, before we met each other, and then shoot, man, we just met, and then like online, really. That's kind of how it went. He probably got a better way of saying it though.
Yeah, I mean, like that's about it. I mean, like you said, like people that you know of, but you don't know them directly, because like I said, we got connected through a family friend, and he was just kind of telling me like, yeah, there's somebody that I know. He's in media. I feel like y'all should be able to connect and just network. And he sent me your name, and I was like, why does this sound familiar? Then I looked it up. I was like, okay, I already follow this dude. Like, I already know him. Like, I already knew what you had going on. Whether that was with On3, obviously, relationship with Deion Sanders and all the reporting that you're able to do with that. Like, I was a fan just off of that, and I didn't even know you. So it was like when I saw you had that platform and I saw that you were already kind of, doing it and being on camera and kind of building out something of your own, something that I was trying to do myself, just something that I gravitated towards. And, it was just kind of one of those things, like, again, like you see somebody at Rec League, you see somebody at Open Gym, you hoop them for a couple times, but you don't get their number the first time. And then you see him a second time, and it's like, oh yeah, you start talking to him and stuff, but you still might not connect. Maybe you connect on IG and you're DMing each other back and forth, but you're not really like going like in depth of like really like trying to have that conversation at first, and then just over time it just like organically y'all just start to click. And I feel like that's what happened with us. Like we exchanged a few messages, and then like connected on Instagram, and then like as time went on, we just started like exchanging more messages, got more serious about doing this, and then you said you were looking for a producer, somebody to kind of help facilitate this. So I was like, I know somebody who is Emmy nominated. Sammy's a little
Emmy nominated is huge.
He's a little humble, but saying he's that guy. So I was like, yeah, bring him on board, and us three, we can do something that's major. So that's kind of how we got connected, and it's like crazy once once the people that connected us hear this, they're gonna like, I'm sure they're gonna be smiling as they listen to this, like, okay, they really went out there and did it. So
shout out to Rick, shout out to Andy.
Yeah, exactly, man. Shout out to those guys, and excited to just to start this, and just kind of like further build the relationship between the three of us, and bring this type of chemistry and vibe to the people.
For sure, man. I'm glad to hear it. I definitely know how that's like. I mean, it's kind of like us, man. First couple of days at camp, like we was kind of vibing, kind of like a little standoffish, and then probably by day 3, we were locked in. So just like rec league. But I just kind of want to give the people like what to expect from this pod. You know what I'm saying? Like we all 3 of us come from SEC County. Kenny and I went to Georgia. Dukes, you went to Auburn. We're kind of plugged in those circles, so you're gonna hear a lot of SEC talk. But we also well rounded. We like to talk about a lot of different things. Like you said, we're all in the music. We all tapped in the culture. So with that being said, I want to start off our first segment. We're gonna call it "What's the Scoop?" It's our breaking news of the week, and this one's a big one. And I know you guys have probably heard about this already, but Nick Saban will serve as the co-chair for President Trump's administration, for the Trump administration's Commission on College Football. That commission will examine prominent issues like the transfer portal, unregulated booster compensation, the employment of college athletes in Title IX. Trump's already considering an executive order aimed at greater scrutiny towards NIL deals. And Saban is not the only college football guy that's been vocal about this. Obviously, Alabama Senator Tommy Tuberville has been vocal about the changing landscape of college football in this era of NIL. What do you guys kind of see happening with this commission, and what implications will it have on the sport as a whole? And Kenny, I'll start with you.
Yeah, it's interesting because Nick Saban is playing at a charity pro-am today. He was asked about this, and he said it was kind of funny. He was like, to be honest, I really don't know where this thing is going and exactly what we're going to talk about. But obviously, anybody who's been in college athletics and follows it, whether they're a fan or as a member of the media, knows that Nick Saban is very, very passionate about wanting to do what he feels like is best for college football. He's definitely been a big proponent of regulating the sport, adding some more guardrails and some more guidelines, and him being able to to do this with President Trump. And they're bringing on Cody Campbell, who is leading Texas Tech's NIL collective, who just sold his oil company for $4 billion. So if you watch the show Landman, anybody watch Landman here? No. Well, I was about to make a Landman reference. Basically a show on Paramount about the oil business in Texas. And he is basically like the billionaire on the TV show. So he is somebody who is very wealthy, obviously sold his company for $4 billion, and he has been funneling a lot of that money into Texas Tech athletics. They've been the biggest spender in the transfer portal. They do have a lot of momentum with their football program. So in that aspect, it's very interesting that Nick Saban and Corey Campbell are seemingly on opposite ends of the spectrum when it comes to at least the topic of NIL. Nick Saban wants to add regulation. He wants to institute a salary cap, if he can, something that can add a little bit more evenness around the sport. And then you have Corey Campbell on the other side, who is this billionaire who is funneling all this money into a program trying to start them. So the two of them together being able to talk about these issues, I think is going to be really, really interesting. So how much are they actually going to be able to do? I'm not quite sure, because if you've been following what's been happening with the NCAA and the Supreme Court, they've been getting taken to task in the courts pretty much on every single issue. I mean, whether that is, NIL or anything regarding, anything within that space, the courts have been ruling against the NCAA. So I don't know exactly how they're going to be able to do it. Maybe it's just going to come in the form of a Trump executive order, but I'll be really interested to see what these two come up with as they examine the sport. And I'll let Duke go, but I have some ideas of maybe some things that they might be able to bring to the table.
Yeah, for sure, man. I think it's like this kind of reminds me of like, who was the GM of the A's like in Moneyball? Was it Billy Beane, I believe? Like Billy Beane and George Steinbrenner. Like you take like the A's who like try to do everything for as cheap as possible, and then you get like the Yankees who literally like were the evil empire who tried to pay everybody to do it, and then you just put them together, say, hey, y'all figure it out. So I think getting two people from opposite sides of the spectrum provide really unique perspective. But also, I just think that how far away are they really? Like, so I know that, we think about a billionaire, and usually you would think, all right, well, somebody who's benefited from capitalism by being able to amass that much capital in the first place. But somebody who's probably like, of anybody, when you think about people who got a ton of money, they want people around them. They hang around other people with money. They want it. It's not fun when you're just beating up on people who don't have the bread. Then Nick Saban was somebody who basically amassed all the physical capital he could, right? And beat up on people because he had basically better good. He had better players, just straight up. And during that time, no matter what people say or how they got all those players, of course, you'll see all the memes about, go to Alabama, you're gonna get a Dodge Challenger, and you'll have the newest chain, and that's what it was like, basically, or quote unquote the Red Elephant Club, who was dropping envelopes off. Well, now everybody's got a Red Elephant Club, this mystical money conglomerate that was making players go to Bama. So from having somebody who is as well versed in X's and O's and understanding that even though I got X's and O's, I know it takes Jimmy's and Joe's, and having a guy who has the capital in our new above the table paying players, right? Because before you had times where, I'm not saying that Texas Tech was guilty, or any team was guilty, but we knew that players were getting paid in college football. So the legal way to do it, you've got somebody who's done it at a rate that I don't think there hasn't been anybody who you've been able to put a face with the dollar signs since the guy maybe Ruiz at Miami. Outside of that, you didn't really know about these top teams having just one particular guy who's responsible for the boon in players and capital that it took to go get these players at the transfer portal. So when you consider all of those facts, I can't wait. They need a reality show. Like, they need a camera in those meetings. We need to know what's going on. I want to hear Nick Saban when he says, "Hey, bro, that's just ridiculous." Even and this is the best part about it. The new Nick Saban, who was just getting on College Game Day saying whatever the hell he wanted to, cussing
Right.
that wheel, and the Nick Saban that we couldn't see in the past. I think this is going to be so interesting. And if I was the guy who had billions of dollars, I would be recording every step of it because I feel like it's must-see TV behind the scenes.
I think it's kind of funny because this has been 90, 100 years of trying to rein in like spending in college football, whether it be illegal or legal now. Now it's the Wild West. We see a lot of older coaches resisting NIL. We see rosters turning over at historic rates year to year. So I'm just kind of wondering like what they can actually do legally. I mean, as Trump can sign an executive order, but sometimes a lot of that stuff is going to still be subject to Congress. So I'm just kind of wondering what it is that this commission can really get done.
Yeah, I think obviously the main issue is what's happening with NIL, and something that Duke said that I think is important to state is that there are some issues that they are pretty aligned on. So, for example, Cody Campbell has written several op-eds about how he would restructure the sport. And one of them is trying to call for an antitrust exemption that would allow a governing body to enact a single set of rules. So right now, everything that's happening with NIL is a state-by-state basis, which is why you see certain states trying to pass certain laws into effect that would give them a recruiting advantage. One of the biggest that I can think of was when Missouri passed one of the first of its kind that allowed players in state at the high school level to earn NIL dollars in high school should they sign a letter of intent with an in-state school, coinciding with the same time that Luther Burden was a rising senior in high school in the St. Louis area. Obviously, that's something that could incentivize a Luther Burden to not go to a Georgia, not go to Alabama, but to stay home at Missouri, which he did, and he was awesome there and elevated the program. And now you see other states trying to implement other things, like in the state that we're from, Georgia, trying to pass something into law right now that would give tax breaks to NIL athletes in the state, which would be a huge advantage when you're recruiting against schools in Florida and Tennessee that don't have state income tax. So these are the type of things that you might be able to enact that would make things a little bit more even across the board. Or instituting a salary cap is probably the one that Nick Saban is trying to point to the most. Is something unilaterally that all schools would have to adhere to. So something that is
good luck.
Right. Exactly. Right. Exactly. Which gets into the whole conversation of fair market value, which I think is like a very popular buzzword, but in our own lives, not something that we would want to happen to us. Like, it sounds good to say, Jackson Cantwell, the #1 player in the country, who just committed to Miami yesterday, reportedly is getting $2.5 million upfront from Miami for his first year. And somebody would say, well, that's not fair market value. That's not fair. We need to have guardrails or guidelines on it. But if in your own life, if you were an engineer or an electrician and somebody wanted to give you $2.5 million upfront for a project, who's to say that they can't do that if that's what they feel like you're worth, right? No one said, Nick Saban, no one said anything about him making tens of millions of dollars as the highest state employee coaching football, as it is in any other state where there's a prominent coach. So to Sammy's point, good luck trying to regulate that. But I do think we all agree that there does need to be some type of regulation in general with how these players are getting paid and how schools are being able to disseminate that money. So maybe we can get into a little bit of the house settlement, the $20.5 million that schools are going to be able to spend. But that will probably be the biggest thing that I will point to is I would think that Campbell and Saban are at least aligned that there needs to be some type of universal guidelines that every state can adhere to, right? So there's not going to be a competitive balance in this state and that state, and then trying to figure out if there's any type of way to initiate a true salary cap.
I'd agree.
Yeah. No, I think it's ambitious to say that you're going to try to institute a salary cap at the very least. Very ambitious. As much as you can have. Well, I mean, we've already kind of done this. Shout out to Bomani because I've heard Bomani talk about this, but we've already kind of done this in terms of a salary cap, and the salary cap was 0. And you saw what happened when people were adhering to the salary cap. There was a lot of money being funneled under the table. So you can, as much as you can try to put guardrails around NIL and try to introduce a salary cap, these guys are going to spend money that they want to spend money on. And that's going to be getting these players to these universities. And I don't know how you can realistically try to curb that.
Yeah, I just don't see like how you can stop Phil Knight in the current set of rules. How can you stop Phil Knight from giving a shoe deal to a guy that goes to the University of Oregon when it'll make him money at Nike, when it'll make him money locally, and it's his alma mater? That's the true essence of NIL. Somebody who you can use your name, image, and likeness in order to help market a product that you have. So why wouldn't the number one quarterback in the country or whoever it is, if I give this guy a shoe, I give him an ad, I give him a sweatsuit, I give him anything and tell him to promote it, that would, his name, image, and likeness would actually make money, but I could only use this name, image, and likeness at the University of Oregon. I could only use it in Eugene. Where's that wrong? With the current set of rules, I don't see where that's illegal. And I think that's what you're going to run into.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think, that's the thing that you just said that I think is important. You said it's not illegal. And I think there's so much education that needs to happen in which we look at how player transactions and player movement and recruiting is happening. Again, I'll go back to the Jackson Cantwell thing where it feels like there's been a lot of, opinions and even Miami fans being a little defensive about the fact that the money part of it was so much of his recruitment, not the only thing, but a huge part of why he went to Miami. And this almost seemed like a bad thing, right? Like, oh, you got this player because you have a lot of money or you were able to use NIL in the right way. Well, isn't that kind of the point? Like, at least, in how we came up in our culture, having money was a good thing. Right? Like that's not something to be, ashamed of or frowned upon. It's not seen as a negative thing. And I think ironically, Saban was one of the ones that kind of introduced this idea. If y'all remember a couple of years ago when he basically went on that rant about Jimbo Fisher and, Deion Sanders, when he was talking about, he was like, oh, well, Jackson State gave Travis Hunter $1 million. That's why he went there. And Texas A&M got the #1 recruiting class in the year 2022 because they just spent all this money and da-da-da. And it was like, seen as like a negative thing, even though nothing illegal happened in any of those cases, right? Like college athletes are able to earn money. And because maybe Alabama isn't paying as much as other schools are because they don't feel like they have to because of their reputation and their prestige, they're not getting these players. Now, all of a sudden, it's a bad thing when someone else is paying the player to go to their school. So I think there's a lot of education that needs to happen, a lot of like reconstructing of our mind frame of how we're going to view this. I think another thing that I wanted to bring up in regards to what they might be able to bring to the table that might be a little bit more realistic is Cody Campbell is a big proponent of trying to bring college football under the Sports Broadcasting Act of 1961. For those who don't know what that is the antitrust exemption in which like leagues like the NBA, the NFL, Major League Baseball are able to take their whole league and package it together and pitch it to television companies for TV rights that span the entire league. So that's different from college, where the Big Ten goes and negotiates their own media rights deal with Fox and CBS and NBC. And ESPN goes and negotiates theirs with the SEC, and the ACC goes and negotiates their own, and everybody is making different amounts of money. What Campbell is proposing, and his op-eds, if you go and read some of the things that he's written, is we need everybody in college football to come under one umbrella. And if we pitch college football as a whole, all of these teams, to a media conglomerate, everybody is going to make more money, which on its face is true, right? If the ACC and if the SEC and the ACC both go away with their TV deals and they pitch themselves along with everybody else, then the ACC is going to make more money. The SEC is going to make less money, obviously, but everybody is going to be kind of unilaterally the same. How is the SEC and the Big Ten going to respond to that? It's unknown, because they're making the most money. They have the most power, right? Are they going to relinquish that power after they spent all of this time trying to, gain this competitive advantage and gain this influence? We're talking about playoff expansion. We're talking about these other things. So I think that's something, again, if we're talking about what they might be able to bring to the table, that's something that, obviously could, be passed into law, or they could take to Congress, or maybe an executive order from Trump is trying to bring them under this antitrust, which would allow, all of college football to maybe get a little bit flatter in terms of how much they're making based off of TV.
I think, again, that's really ambitious, and it sounds like something that could definitely happen. I guess my question is, what would stop the SEC and the Big Ten from basically just branching off and creating their own super league, in a sense?
That's what they're gonna do.
Yeah, that's what this would allow for. You bring them up. If you take everything right and everybody's making the same TV money, that would open the door for the Big Ten and the SEC to say, we're going to take all of our teams and we're going to create our own league, and then they wouldn't be able to get sued because they have the antitrust exemption. So that's something that is potentially opening the door for something like that to happen.
Yeah, I mean, then you think about it too. It's like, why wouldn't they? And that's what they keep trying for. Like all these legislations, like where the SEC and the Big Ten, it's like, all right, we're the biggest, we're the baddest. All right, do something about it. But the funniest thing about all this is, bro, is that it's almost like in our culture, America, if you ain't cheating, you ain't trying. So it don't matter what kind of cap you put on it, no matter what, it's somebody that's gonna be around there saying, like, even in the NFL, they had the Deflategate, there's gonna be illegalities. I don't even know if that's a word, but they're gonna be illegalities regardless of whatever guardrails we put on there. Somebody's going off the track. So I think it's just interesting. It's almost like as the world turns to see what's the next way. Think about it. Every time that they made a car theft deterrent, they found out a way to do without it. Like, remember when the club was the thing back in the day? I'm a little older than y'all. The club on the steering wheel. Come on, bro. I'm gonna last about 2 weeks. After that, what's next? They're gonna find a way around it. And I think it's the same thing in college football. There's gonna be a workaround, but I think it's a valiant effort. That's being put into trying to make this game fair, when it's really like it's basically the Game of Thrones. You can't make it fair.
Right. So just to put a bow on this, I'm gonna ask both of you, and Duke, I'm gonna start with you. If it was up to you, what would you do to kind of try to level the playing field? In a perfect world, you had all the power to make this decision.
I would have a draft.
A draft out of high school?
Draft, Big 12 SEC draft. First of all, I would make them succeed, and I would have a draft. And if you want a 5-star, it's 35 stars. It's 32 teams in the Big 12 and the SEC. You got to draft them. You get, there's only so much you can get every round, and you're gonna switch positions, and that way you'll keep parity if you really want to make it fair. That's the only way you can do it, in my opinion.
Okay, that's interesting. I've never heard somebody propose that, but it does make a lot of sense. Like, if we're talking about instituting a salary cap, to your point, if there's 35 stars a year, and let's say Georgia, Ohio State, and Alabama rush to the market and get the best ones, and they find themselves strapped against the cap, then all of a sudden a school like Kentucky or Purdue or Indiana that still has their money is now going to become the most attractive school because they have the most money to spend. So I think that would be a way to distribute the talent. As for me, I don't even know if this is anything that can be, passed into federal legislation. But like if I was in charge of, or I was a commissioner of college football, the number one thing that I would fix is the transfer portal. I feel like that's the big thing for me that I look at. It says that needs the most regulation. Just the simple fact that players are able to transfer and enter the portal pretty much at any point in the calendar, I feel like is problematic for the sport. And I know someone is going to be listening to this, or maybe somebody will, oppose this with, well, what about coaches? Coaches can also leave whenever they want. That's the truth. But is there any college football coach out there that's been the head coach at 4 schools in 5 years, or 3 schools in 4 years, or has been the head coach at 3 schools in 1 year, where you sign to a school at a high school and then you go through spring practice with them, and then you're the head coach at another school going into the summer? Those are the type of things that I feel like need serious regulation. So while it might not end up being a perfect system where there's a correct level of accountability and balance between coach mobility and player mobility, the fact that there are an unlimited amount of transfers at any point in the calendar that a player wants to choose, I feel like is very problematic for the sport. So that would be what I would try to change, is try to make something a little bit more concrete and a little bit more refined in terms of how player mobility works.
And kind of just bridging the gap between the two of you, I mean, you're talking about a draft / free agency. You're talking about fixing the transfer portal, which will probably end up with signing some sort of contract with universities. I think that players should be collectively bargaining. I think they should be in a union. I think they should be employees, deemed as employees of the school. If you're going to sign them the contracts, if they're going to be in the draft, they should have agents. There should be an apparatus in place to protect players from the universities if all this money is going to be exchanging hands. So that's kind of where I stand on things in terms of just first steps. Yeah, go ahead, bro.
I was about to say, well, that's like if anybody's spoken to a college administrator, you've been watching how they've been moving over the last several years. That is the last thing that these major universities want, and these higher ed authorities want, is for players to be collectively bargained and to come under employees. There's still that sector of, in all of this craziness within college football, that's like the one thing that most people that are like more traditionalists and those who are in the positions of authority, athletic directors, coaches, that's the one thing that they're trying to protect, is the idea of the student athlete, and not the student athlete, and not making them employees to where they can have CBAs and collective bargaining. And I mean, if we're talking about agents, we could do a whole nother show about agent culture and how that is affecting high school and college sports. So I know we have other things that we could talk about, but that what you just said opens the door for so many other things. But if you're listening out there, just know that the athletic director of the school that you're a fan of does not want to collectively bargain with the student athletes. Just know that.
Of course, what does South Park say? Student athlete. Like,
right.
Like what entity that has, billions of dollars or hundreds of millions of dollars on the line wants their quote unquote employees to be collectively bargained?
Right.
None of them.
Right.
Zero.
So I mean,
like, when I was working at the warehouse field, if you worked at a warehouse, if you were in management at a warehouse with a union, we used to say, man, you need to go ask for hazard pay.
Yeah.
Just hard to deal with.
Yeah.
From that perspective, but yeah. And as an employee, I mean, I'll never forget, I was going to get a job at a railroad as a regular employee, and then I was also interviewing for a job as a part of management. And as an employee, the union is absolutely what you want. And as a part of management, you want to avoid it like the plague. And I think it's the exact same thing here. For the powers that be in college football, they want to avoid it like the plague. But for the players, they need it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Which kind of brings us to our next topic, because some of these guys could have used, a CBA. We're going is one guy in particular I'm really thinking about. And we're gonna get into him a little later, but we'll move on to our next segment. It's called Heads or Tails. This is where we're gonna debate some of the hottest quarterbacks in the SEC, but with a little bit of a twist. So here's how it works. We're gonna go team by team across the SEC, and for each quarterback question, we'll flip a coin. Heads, you take the positive side. Tails, you take the negative. No matter where you guys actually stand, we just want you to bring your best debates to the table. 16 teams, 16 quarterback debates, 2 of the sharpest voices right here. Quarterback play around the SEC has been a big topic of discussion, especially with the SEC's poor showing in the CFP last year. So I'm excited to see what you guys have to say. We're going to start with Saban's old squad in Alabama. Jalen Milroe left. Now there's a 3-way battle at quarterback. Ty Simpson, of course, is the favorite. Then you got Keelan Russell, Austin Mack also there, trying to win that battle for QB1. Will Ty Simpson win the job? Kenny, I'm going to start with you and flipping the coin now. It's a virtual coin, ladies and gentlemen, and it's on tails.
Okay, so I'm taking the negative side of this quarterback competition. Okay, so obviously, having covered Alabama the last few years is something I'm very well versed in. The negative side of this battle is that, first, there's nobody in the room that has actually played in a game of significance, right? There's not anybody that has been in a big game, in a big moment. And this is one of the highest pressurized situations in college football. Alabama didn't make the playoffs last year. They're opening the season at Florida State in week 1. And most people will turn their nose up at that. Instead, Florida State was horrible last year and they were 2-10. But Alabama lost to a lot of unranked teams last year too. So this benefit of the doubt that Alabama is just going to roll in there and win off of the logo, we need to move away from that thought process. I think if we're looking at Ty Simpson as the leader in the quarterback competition, which he is right now, why was he not able to overtake Jalen Milroe a year ago? If you're of the belief that Jalen Milroe was one of the biggest reasons why Alabama's offense was not successful a year ago. That's one of the most common things that's been said is Jalen Milroe didn't fit Kalen DeBoer's system, and Kalen DeBoer needs somebody who can throw the ball, and they need somebody who can do this, that, and the third. Well, 2 of the 3 that are involved in this competition were in the same room with Jalen Milroe a year ago. So if it really was that dire for Kalen DeBoer, where he needed a spark in the offense, or he needed an offensive juice, or he needed somebody that was able to throw the ball vertically down the field in the way that his offense needs, there were 2 options right there. And now 2 of those options are in the room at the moment. The other thing that I'll say about this is for Ty Simpson to be going into his 4th year at Alabama, his 4th year in college, his 2nd year in Kalen DeBoer's system, the fact that he has not created clear separation between Austin Mack, who has, I believe, 3 or 4 pass attempts in his career, and Keelan Russell, who just enrolled at Alabama in January, would be concerning to me. There's an obvious experience gap there between him and the other 2. He's been in college longer. He's been in multiple quarterback competitions. Yet there was not clear separation through 15 spring practices to the point where he is the definitive starter going into fall camp. The exact quote from Ryan Grubb was, well, if we had to play a game today, it'd be Ty. Well, probably because he's the oldest and the most experienced and he knows the offense, and he probably has the trust of the teammates just because he's been there the longest, but that doesn't mean that, he's the most talented or the best. So that would be the negative aspect that I would bring to it is like, look, there's a lot of uncertainty within this quarterback competition, and we really don't know if any of these guys are up to task because of all the circumstances that are presented.
All right, turn. Yep.
Here's the positive. The positive is, for me and Auburn fans alike, this is probably the worst quarterback situation that Alabama has been in years. I can't remember a time where you felt like Alabama was more ripe for the picking at this time of the year for the Iron Bowl 6 months in advance that you would say, you know what? Auburn has a better than not shot of knocking Bama off in the Iron Bowl. That's the positive. When you think, and that's an Auburn induced positives. When you look at what, and to your point, Ken, Ty Simpson's been there. And when you have 2 guys, now, well, you know what? That was my joke. Let's get serious here. All right. The positive is that, one, the fact that and I know you say Ty Simpson hasn't been able to separate from these two guys, but when you talk about guys with high-end traits, when you talk about Keelan Russell, who went based on his potential, went from being a SMU commit and a relative unknown up to maybe his 10th, borderline 11th grade year to becoming some people's number one quarterback last year. There are a lot of guys who would have taken Keelan Russell over Bryce Underwood last year. A lot of guys who thought that that he developed that much with his throwing ability. Got a cannon for an arm, and you're in the perfect situation where you don't have to start him game one because Todd Simpson has done enough. But as he develops, and if he develops along this same trajectory, speaking of Keelan Russell, the way that took him from being outside of the top 300 to possibly a top 5 player overall in the class, he's on a trajectory to be this year's Michael Penix on the college level, where we didn't know, like, he didn't play going into the season. You had a veteran who would have been Ty Simpson, aka Kirk Cousins, in this example. But you look at what he can do in the SEC. He can throw the ball at all 3 levels. He can throw it short. He can throw it intermediate. He has the deep ball in space. He can run the ball when you look at his athleticism overall. And then he's just a physically imposing human being. So I think that when you have a guy, if let's say Ty Simpson comes out and plays lights out, well, then you're in a great position because you have a guy like Keelan Russell waiting in the wings. Austin Mack is another guy. You're talking about 2 very highly rated guys. Now, when they got Austin Mack at Washington, that was a big deal for them. He was a big get. We're talking about a high 4-star, borderline 5-star when he signed. So when you have guys that have those athletic traits, you hope that somebody comes out on top. And I think that's probably the most positive thing is, even if you don't have the on-field production, you have the traits. And right now we use traits as the best indicator of who will be successful in the future. That's why we have this whole 32 5-star system, or this ranking system, because based on where you are, you try to predict the future. And I think that when you talk about having a quarterback room based on traits, there aren't a lot that you would want to take over Alabama in the SEC. I mean, when you talk about young guys who have really had that type of pedigree, I can't name who's a younger guy in the SEC that you would rather have on your roster than Keelan Russell. Maybe Deuce Knight.
Yeah,
at that age.
There's a team that I feel like is the best position quarterback wise. We'll get to them on the list, so we'll put a pin in that
for sure. All right,
I have a name for you.
Just last question before we go, and this could be yes or no. If you had to put your life on the line, do you think Bama makes the college football playoff this year?
Yes.
No.
All right.
We're going to the upper room.
The upper room. All right, so we're gonna move on to Duke squad, Auburn. Jackson Arnold will be under center for Auburn. Former 5-star, was a starter at Oklahoma last year. Got benched after 4 games, but then came back and started 5 more. Will he have more success under Hugh Freeze? We're gonna flip the coin here, and we're on heads. So Duke, you take the positive here.
Man, thank you. Whew. Man, I'm so glad I get to take the positive. All right, so when you talk about Jackson Arnold, you talk about a guy last year who had 5 receivers that were injured at some point during the season, someone who had a very shaky offensive line, someone whose offensive coordinator they moved on from at Oklahoma, so maybe not the best fit, and someone who had elite traits when we talk about why he was an Elite 11 quarterback, someone whose athleticism isn't spoken about as much as it probably should be, as he had close to 500 yards rushing the ball last year. Is he a guy who wants contact and is going to hit you on the second level with his shoulder? Absolutely not. Does he have a quick release, and can he do a lot more than Peyton Thorne was able to do? And no disrespect to Peyton Thorne, but does he have the ability to do more? Absolutely. I think in Hugh Freeze's system, the type of weapons that they have on the perimeter, I'm willing to take, and yes, I can be biased, but I'm willing to take Auburn 1 through 7 at receiver over anybody else in the country. You might find a better 3, maybe even find a better 2, but with Cam Coleman, Eric Singleton, who was the #1 transfer receiver in the portal, Malcolm Simmons, who probably is the best athlete on the Auburn team, and then at 4, whether you go Perry Thompson, who was another 5-star, or you go Sam Turner, who was probably the most underrated prospect we've seen at wide receiver in Georgia in years, who had a a bang up spring, I think that Auburn is well positioned to be able to spread the ball around, and that's what Jackson Arnold is going to be the beneficiary. So I think that he will be able to have a better year under Hugh Freeze than he had at Oklahoma, and not to mention the run game where you returned Amari Austin, who CBS Sports, one of your writers, had him ranked as the #1 return to running back in the SEC.
All right, Kenny, what about you?
All right. Yeah, so taking the negative approach, I agree with everything that he said as far as Jackson Arnold was not in the best position to succeed at Oklahoma. But building off of that point, one of the biggest things that confused me about the Oklahoma situation is he was somebody that was perceived as the heir apparent and somebody that really Oklahoma moved off of Dylan Gabriel in favor of Jackson Arnold at the first sign of adversity. Moved off of him, and it turned into a quarterback controversy. That's one of the sticking points that I would point to as far as Hugh Freeze is. Maybe you could point to the caliber of quarterback that he had in the room at Auburn last year, but the musical chairs that he played at the quarterback position last year, whether it was with Hank Brown or Peyton Thorne, I don't think did well for the quarterback psyche. And I just wonder if Jackson Arnold is struggling this fall at Auburn. Is he going to go to Deuce Knight? Is he going to go to Ashton Daniels? Is it going to be a repeat of last year, or is Hugh Freeze going to stick a little bit more to his guns and be behind his starting quarterback a little bit more? So that would be one of my big question marks, is how is Hugh Freeze going to handle this situation? Was it the personnel, and he was just like, you know what, I'm just trying to find a spark, and I don't really believe in any of these guys, so whoever has the most momentum is who I'm going with? Or is it, a situation where he just really didn't know how to handle that quarterback situation? He ended up doing a little bit more harm than good. So he flushed out last year's quarterback room. He has a brand new one. How is he going to manage it is one of my biggest question marks. And then as far as Jackson Arnold goes, he has the requisite traits and he has the requisite athleticism, but just from what we saw at Oklahoma last year, and granted the receiving situation wasn't great, not a very good deep ball passer. A statistic for y'all: of all the quarterbacks in the SEC who have at least 15 pass attempts, 20 yards downfield, he is last in completion percentage at 26%. So that's 19 quarterbacks in the SEC. He was last in terms of throwing the ball down the field. He mentioned Cam Calhoun, Eric Singleton. They have awesome receivers, and they're going to want to push the ball down the field. Is Jackson Arnold going to be able to get them the ball the way that they wanted to? If we're talking about, short passing 15 yards and in and operating in that space, obviously he's shown an ability to do that. I wonder if that stat is going to translate at Auburn, or is it, again, just a horrible situation at Oklahoma? Hugh Freeze obviously is a way more advanced offensive mind than what was at Oklahoma. I think he has proven that. So it's a better situation, but I still have some question marks on how this whole thing is going to shake out.
Duke, care to respond?
I will also say, when you look at that deep ball stat, Peyton Thorne actually was one of the better quarterbacks, and I need to get the exact number. I was trying to crunch it right quick, but he was one of the better as far as you would be surprised. Hold on, let me see. I think I got it here. Seasons in. Oh, that was the year before. All right. Let me say this: throwing it to Cam Coleman and throwing it to Eric Singleton, those guys will actually help those stats. So I don't think you would be hard pressed to tell me who Oklahoma's top 2 or 3 receivers were last year. Hell, who was their top receiver last year?
Couldn't even tell you.
Yeah, no, so at this
like
point,
I said, I understand it was a bad situation.
Yeah, yes, and I'm with you on that one. So that's the only reason I think he'll be better. And I think what you got more than anything is a motivated Hugh Freeze. So I think he's going to be motivated because now people are starting to question. He always came with the offensive wonderkin type deal. People are starting to question it. One, his decision making for staying with Peyton Thorne when he had the opportunity to go into the transfer portal, and saying he went on record as to say, "Hey, Auburn just wasn't in the market for paying $1 million for a quarterback." When if you go back and you look at what Cam Ward was able to do, who Auburn was rumored to be recruiting early on in the process, what if you would have gave him that $1 million? How you think Auburn season goes? Do you turn the ball over 8 times in 2 games from the quarterback position? So I think with that being said, those are the type of things that when you look at Auburn season and why they underachieved, I think a lot of it was pinned on the quarterback position, whether it's fair to Peyton Thorne or not, who, I think he got a little bit of a raw deal from the fans. I don't think he was put in the best position either. But I think that room has changed. The offensive line has changed. You bring in bookend offensive tackles, Xavier Chaplin from Virginia Tech, and Mason Murphy from USC. You got some. Now you put some of your veteran tackles inwards to, and they did a lot of top grading. They started at the top and brought in starters in that offense. So I think that Jackson Arnold is the best situation. There aren't a lot of quarterbacks in the country who have more talent around him than Jackson Arnold.
All right, so let's move on to Jackson Arnold's old squad, the Oklahoma Sooners. They were 6-7 last year. We talked about it. Jackson Arnold got benched. Michael Hawkins Jr. didn't play all that well. Receiver room in shambles. Offensive line shaky. Well, now John Mateer is here, the former Washington State QB, garnering a lot of buzz heading into the season. Will he be the savior of the program? I'm going to go back to Duke again, and we're going to flip the coin, and we are landing on heads. You take the positive here.
Man, I'm going to take the positive because when I talked to guys early on in the portal, it was not even in the portal, in the season. When I talked to guys at different schools, the number one guy that people wanted last year that was a candidate to go to the portal was John Mateer. Even so much so he may have helped his offensive coordinator to get a job. He was the guy. He had a blend of athleticism. He may not be the biggest guy. He may not be the fastest guy, but he's a guy that I'm going positive, right?
Yeah.
Okay, you gotta stay with he's a guy that, and I hate to use this term, that even when you look at the stats and you look at what they were able to do, they won 8 games. His head coach got a job out of that. Like everybody's happy. Offensive coordinator got a new gig. Coach got a new gig. He's got a new gig. I hate using this term, but when you talk about moxie, a guy who stands up in the face of pressure, I would love to go put some numbers to it. We can number crunch later. But when you talk about a guy, when you want to raise the level of play around you, there are some intangibles there. And I know there are a lot of people who hate intangibles, but when you look at John Mateer and what he brought to that team, the passion that he brought, the fire that he brought, and him coming from a situation where he wasn't expected to win and he won, coming to an Oklahoma team where, one, he has familiarity with the offense. He's going to be more familiar with that offense than anybody there. So now he's automatically in a leadership role because he can translate that offense to some of his new teammates, to that offensive line. He's the guy who can say, hey, the new center that you get from Stanford, who's a heck of a player, you bring him in, he can say, all right, you've got a short learning curve. I can help you get over that learning curve. So now when you look at the talent, that infusion of talent, he's a leader without even having to be there already because he's the most senior in that offense from day one. So I think there's a lot to be said for that. And then when you go look at what they did off the field, bringing in Jim Nagy from the Senior Bowl, who probably had more information than anybody in the country when it comes to what the talent that's in college football, him being the guy that's buying the groceries for the meal that you're cooking, I think that you couldn't find a better guy to put him in a better situation. And we may not even know everybody who's around him, but what we do know is the talent evaluator that is around him, who's picking the players now and who's going to have a voice in who plays. This guy may have been arguably the top person in the country at talent evaluation, as shown by his record at the Senior Bowl. So I think Mateer is in a great situation in order to bring Oklahoma football back to the forefront.
All right, Kenny, John Mateer, you take the negative.
All right, so all great points. I think with John Mateer and what I'm thinking about with Oklahoma is really just the amount of newness that's around this roster and the amount of uncertainty would give me a little reason for pause. So he's coming in with Ben Auerbach, new offensive coordinator. So we're talking about a new offensive system, pretty much an entirely new receiving core, whether they're bringing in transfers or guys like Jaden Gibson or Deion Burks who were hurt last year coming off of injuries. They're going to have to step into major roles in addition to learning a new offense. And I think with Oklahoma, I'm looking at their roster turnover. As of the winter window, they lost about 26 players to the portal. 19 of them signed a Power 5 program. So they lost this pretty significant amount of talent because obviously the portal will tell you what your true value is, right? If you are at a Power 5 program and you enter the portal and you end up at an FCS program, that means that by and large, the Power 5 level didn't see you as that same player that you might have been recruited into. So the majority of the players that left Oklahoma went to Power 5 programs, so they lost an extreme amount of talent. On the other end, they brought in 15 players from the SCS level. So just if we're looking at it on paper, you lose Power 5 talent, you're replacing it with FCS talent. Obviously, we know that FCS talent being elevated to that level has been a good thing for the sport. Obviously, look at Shedeur Sanders, Travis Hunter, other examples of that. But doing it at that level, we're talking about close to 20 of those players at an SEC school like Oklahoma. There's going to be some reason for a pause there about, is that going to be able to keep the program at a place where they're going to compete? Because Oklahoma is not like a Kentucky where a 7-5 or 8-4 is going to be, acceptable. This is a program that we look at and say, we expect Oklahoma to compete at the highest level. So is that talent going to be able to elevate Oklahoma to a point where they were better than they were a year ago? I believe they were 7-5 or 6-6. Are they going to be able to get into a 10-win, caliber? Those are the things that I have question about in terms of if John Mateer is going to be able to elevate all of those things and be that stabilizer along with his OC Ben Auerbach. But as far as the individual talent, it's obviously there. But as far as, the newness, the uncertainty at certain positions, a lot of players on the offensive side of the ball that are going to be expected to step up in terms of level of competition. Those would be my question marks as far as if Oklahoma is going to be able to take a step forward in the SEC and not remain at their status quo.
How many wins do you think Oklahoma has this year?
Just regular season?
Just regular season.
8.
I go with 8. I haven't dug into the schedule, but I'll go with 8 just off top.
Okay. All right. Let's move on to Georgia, the defending SEC champions. Gunnar Stockton, of course, was thrust into the lineup after Carson Beck went down in the SEC championship game. Now he's the presumptive starter. Now he's under Mike Bobo's system. Is he actually good enough to lead Georgia back to the national title? Kenny, we're going to start with you since you are a Georgia alum, and we're going to have you take the negative here.
Okay. I think the negatives with Gunnar Stockton is, as far as just like looking at him in terms of just like physical traits and physical attributes, I don't think that there's anything that jumps off of the page. Obviously, a gamer, obviously somebody that has the respect of his teammates. We saw what he did in the Texas game, but the Notre Dame game also gave me a little bit of reason for pause as well. So not a great game with Notre Dame. I think that there are some things with him in terms of, his decision-making, his processing that I think are going to be question marks coming into the season. And Georgia's offense with a lot of uncertainty as well. They were pretty much replacing their entire offensive line. They are replacing a great deal amount of their receiving core as well. Noah Thomas is coming in as a transfer. Zachariah Branch is coming in as a transfer. Colby Young, off of his legal situation, is coming back into the fold. He played almost, none of last year. He only played the first couple of games. The running game situation is in flux. Nate Frazier is experienced, but he had his up and downs. They had to go and get a running back out of the transfer portal. There's not much behind them. So there's a lot of uncertainty with Georgia's offense. If this was, let's say, a Stetson Bennett situation where he's walking onto an offense with A.D. Mitchell and Brock Bowers and George Pickens and Broderick Jones and James Cook and Zamir White, all of these guys who are in the NFL now or high round picks, there will be a little bit more room for confidence that he will be able to come in and basically just distribute the ball and play point guard. But there's a lot of uncertainty on this offense. It's pretty much going to be a whole new unit. He's going to be tasked with leading that group and really having to be a true difference maker. We're talking about Georgia winning a national championship. He's not going to he can't just be a game manager. He's got to be a game changer for this offense. Based on what we've seen, I don't know if he is that. Maybe the sum of all the parts of these offenses, like a Noah Thomas, like a Zach Branch, maybe these guys are so elite that they're going to be able to elevate who Gunnar Stockton is. But based off of those things, there's just too much uncertainty for me to say that he's going to take Georgia to a national championship level. There's obviously also the Mike Bobo piece of this. If we're talking, him as a play caller, a developer, all these things are obviously up to question. Probably the biggest hot button topic of the Georgia fan base. I think obviously last year was a little bit tough to judge him on just based off of the circumstances. Carson Beck led the league in interceptions. They led the nation in drops. They didn't have a great running game. But this is a big year for Bobo as well, and something where him and Gunnar Stockton know each other for a long time. Maybe those two being in the foxhole together is a good thing. But there's some uncertainty with him too, as far as his game planning and how is he going to make all of these pieces fit, right? And how is he going to be able to elevate this offense? So all of these questions combined gives me reason for pause that he might be able to elevate them to a national championship level. Is Georgia going to make the playoffs? Yeah, probably, because of their culture and their talent, and they have Kirby Smart. But we're talking about getting back to that national championship point. I cannot give that nod of confidence to Gunnar Stockton just yet.
All right, Duke, what you got?
Yeah, if I were to say, yeah, I just would say probably, because if you're a playoff team, in my opinion, 9 times out of 10, especially in the SEC or national championship team, I think on the flip side of that, Gunnar Stockton is someone who's been biding his time. You saw what he came in, he was able to do in the playoffs. Didn't have the best games, but one thing I do know, the players believed in him. You were able to let a guy like Jalen Rashada walk because you knew what you had in Gunnar Stockton. You didn't have to, make an unreasonable play as far as NIL or whatever it would be, because you knew what you felt like you had in Gunnar Stockton. Somebody who can affect the game on multiple levels. When you look at him, maybe a more tradey Stetson Bennett, maybe a little faster. They don't call him Gunner; they call him Gunner. Like they say, he got a little swag to him. So
one of Stockton.
Yeah, Warner. Yeah, low key Warner. The players love him. I talked to multiple guys on their roster ahead of time, and they weren't worried going in. I think with the offensive line, yeah, you have a little bit to be desired, but getting a guy like, when you think about some of the guys that you bring back, like Ernest Greenback, and shoot, your center is the OC's son. I mean, there are a lot of things that could work into it where you say, okay, how could this work? One, I think you'll be a little bit better defensively, even though you lose a guy like Smile Monday at the linebacker position. I think this is probably the best iteration of Georgia's linebacker room, 1 through 4, since Smile and Pop Dumas were the babies on the team, and you had Quay Walker, Channing Tindall, and N'Kobe Dean. So now when you think about older CJ Allen, you think about Raylan Wilson, you think about Chris Cole, the kid from Justin, I forget his last name, maybe Justin Williams, I think. Mm-hmm. Athletically, it's not a better 4 on the second level. Now when you add a guy, Elijah, what's the monster freshman defensive lineman that the guys were compared? Is it Elijah Williams, I believe? What's his name? Hold on, let me hit pause. Elijah Williams. That's my guy, Elijah Williams. They say Elijah Williams is probably the best guy that you've seen there since Jalen Carter. So when you think about defensive line, the traditional Georgia teams, you add a lot in the transfer portal. You get a 6'5", 300-pound guy and Josh Horton just to kind of help those numbers. They're going to play 7 defensive linemen. So this is probably one of those traditional Georgia teams where they're going to want to shrink the game, beat up on you. They're not going to ask for Gunner to do a ton. And we talk about Mike Bobo, and a lot of people, they always make jokes about how many bubbles and tunnel screens he throws. But there is not a better player in the country to throw the ball to in the phone booth than Zach Branch. And I think now that's the guy. If you're going to do it, he's the guy you throw it to. And then when you look at another year of Nate Frazier, true freshman Bo Walker, who turned heads all spring, and people don't realize he's basically like another version of Nate Frazier who has long speed to go along with that toughness. Yes, I don't feel like Georgia, this is the best Georgia team we've ever seen. But nobody in college football scares me to the point where I say they're just more talented than Georgia, to the point where I don't think Gunnar Stockton can lead this much talent into the national championship.
And Gunnar Stockton is your typical Georgia quarterback. He's your Stetson Bennett, he's your Aaron Murray, a little undersized, good old boy from Georgia, not flashy, just kind of happy to be the starting quarterback there. And I think that kind of bodes well for his success. Kenny, I know you went to Georgia. We both went to Georgia. You have a lot of experience with these typical Georgia quarterbacks. Can you just talk a little bit more about like how he kind of fits like Kirby's ideal quarterback?
Yeah, I mean, just like you said, somebody who just kind of fits the bill. Son of a coach, prolific high school quarterback, and then went to Georgia despite all of the other circumstances of, Georgia went and had Dylan Raiola committed, and they went and got Ryan Puglisi, and they were trying really hard for Arch Manning, and they went out and got players out of, they tried to go get quarterbacks out of the portal if they could, and all of those things. Gunnar Stockton never wavered in any of that. He just stayed down, continued to compete, continued to buy his time. From what I understand, has been a really strong player in practice, which Kirby Smart emphasizes. And like you said, his just personality is something that I think that the team gravitated towards. I think you saw that in the SEC championship. I think when they were down, that was a game where like Georgia was not beating Texas, and Carson Beck gets hurt and Gunner's in, and they're just holding on for dear life until the end. Like Georgia won that game down at halftime, and Gunner was able to provide a little bit of a spark. So to Duke's point, the team is behind him. He drives like this old 1980s pickup truck or whatever. That was like a big thing going into the Sugar Bowl. It just kind of speaks to his personality and his demeanor, really low key and really just kind of about his business. So all of those things I think does bode well for Georgia's culture. It'll be interesting to see what transpires this season. And going back to the Alabama conversation, when they come to Athens in week 4, that's going to be a massive game. And we don't know who's Alabama's quarterback is going to be at that time. Maybe it's Ty Simpson. Maybe it's somebody else, Gunnar Stockton. That's going to be, I think, the first data point, at least on the Georgia side, about where they are at quarterback. And it's going to be a big data point for Alabama as well.
Yep. We'll see if Gunnar Stockton is one of one.
See what you did there.
See what I did there? All right. All right, moving on to the team that Georgia played in the SEC Championship, Texas. Quinn Ewers off to the NFL. Arch Manning is stepping in as a full-time starting quarterback. Arch is the preseason Heisman favorite. Is he the real deal? Will he live up to the hype? Kenny, we're going to start with you on this one, and you are going to take the positive here.
Okay. I think when you look at what Texas is building with Sarkisian, this is just kind of their time to take that next step. And I think Arch, with the full offseason under Sarkisian's tutelage, we might see a different version of Texas's offense. I think a lot of us were wondering why he wasn't a bigger part of the offense last year, especially, there were some moments where Quinn Ewers was struggling. But in the times that Arch was able to actually start full games, I understand it wasn't against the greatest of competition, but he showed the athletic traits. I think Texas offense is in a much better position to be more effective next year. They lost a lot of running backs in the preseason last year to injury. Those guys are going to be coming back. I'm thinking of a guy like a CJ Baxter, for example, and those guys are going to be able to come back. They have a better run game. They've been building in the trenches. Ryan Wingo in his second year, Khalil Lockett as a 5-star who's going to be in the fold. I like where they're at in terms of their personnel. I like where they're at in terms of what they built on the trenches. I think that getting their stable of running backs back is going to be a good thing. And I just trust who Steve Sarkisian is as a play caller and an offensive developer. So I just think all those things combined is going to have Arch Manning in a position to succeed. Is he going to be a one and done at Texas, and is he going to be the number 1 pick in the draft? I think that's a little bit too presumptuous, but I think him being a high-level SEC starter is well within the reach, and I think Texas being an SEC favorite is warranted given all of those circumstances. So high on Arch, and I think that him with the full offseason with Sarkisian, where he's not worrying about, do I devote all this time to Arch when I still have Quinn Ewers, and him trying to kind of walk that line, especially in this era of the transfer portal and all these things. There's no doubt that Arch Manning is the leader of the team, the leader of the offense, being able to use his dual threat ability. That's something that I'm interested in seeing with Steve Sarkisian as well, him with like a true dual threat quarterback and explosive playmakers on the outside. So high on what they can do at Texas, and for those reasons, I think that they're going to be just fine at quarterback.
Yeah, I don't know, man. If I were to take the negative side of if Arch can be, what was the exact question? I want to make sure I got it right.
Will he live up to the hype? Can he,
no,
that potential?
No, overhyped, dog. Like, and it's no disrespect to him, but man, when you are billed as the most athletic and the Manning family member with the most potential, your granddaddy is Archie Manning. Your dad was probably the most athletic of all three, and Cooper Manning, and your uncles are Eli and Peyton Manning, who on TV every week. So there was not. It's not even like you got to break from being able to, the Manning name. The Manning name has been relevant for the past 30 to 40 years in football. 40 years, really 50 years in football. The Manning name has been synonymous with quarterback, and so the level of hype that Arch Manning got, he would have to be like, I don't know, he had to win a Heisman and a Biletnikoff and whatever in order to live up to that type of hype. I just don't think he can do it. And I don't think he's a bad quarterback, but he's really a taller version of Gunnar Stockton with a rich daddy, like to keep it a buck. Like, I mean, he can run a little bit, he can throw a little bit, strong arm, 6'4", but outside of that, I mean, it ain't a whole lot of difference that I saw last year. Because, I mean, is he a 4.3 40? I don't think so. I mean, I think, and when you look at the linebackers in the defensive line, guys that you see in the SEC who basically populate the first rounds in the NFL draft, You're not just running away from them guys like you back at Archbishop what? Isidore, Norman, I don't know, one of them archbishops. You know, in small single A, in small private school football in Louisiana, we saw a little bit of it last year, but you also saw some games where Arch tried to tug it and go, and he couldn't get up out of there because of the speed of the defenses that you'll see in the SEC. I think he'd probably be a better Big 12 quarterback than the SEC quarterback. Do I think Arch Manning is void of talent? Absolutely not. Do I think he's worthy of a draft pick? For sure. If Dylan Gabriel can go third round, he can yeah, for sure they'll draft him. I mean, what's his ceiling? I mean, I think maybe nobody, even with what Bo Nix did last year, nobody was just like, oh my God, he's just the best ever. He's a good quarterback. And I think that's where he is. He's in that level. Like he's not a game transcending quarterback like the hype would provide. I think he's a good quarterback that'll be a high round draft pick and that'll allow Texas to have a good season. But I don't think that he's that transformative quarterback that the hype that came along with him will lead us to believe.
So you don't see him being generational in the sense of like Trevor Lawrence or Andrew Luck.
That's a bad one.
Yeah, that's
a prospect, you know.
Yeah, prospect for sure. But I think he just feels. I mean, think about this. Quinn Ewers ain't even get drafted, and that man had you stiff armed the whole time. Trevor Lawrence, if college Trevor Lawrence was at Texas, Quinn Ewers would have had to transfer, just for comparison. That's what I think.
I will say I was told this by a source last year that Sark knew that if they wanted to play A+ level offense, that he would go with Arch, but he thought that they could get by on B+ offense with Quinn Ewers, and that Quinn Ewers was probably like a little more stable, especially towards the end of the season. So the potential clearly is there. Sark clearly has a belief that Arch can elevate this offense to heights that they haven't seen before. But you know, will he be the number one pick in the draft next year if he were to come out? That's to be determined. I think, you know, he has all the tools. He's got the name, which matters. If you know anything about that Manning family, the name matters. As far as him being a Heisman, like the Heisman favorite, that might be a little too much for me for a guy who hasn't really started, you know, college football.
I think that name matters from one generation to the next. Like, I think that like the name has, you know, it's went through a couple of filters from Archie to Arch. So hey, I just think it's hard. You got like, let me ask y'all this, but a little bit off the rails, but is Eli Manning a Hall of Famer?
For sure. For sure. For sure. Based off of like what he was to the game and his really just his playoff performances, what I would say is the reason why. Like the two playoff runs, the two Super Bowls, especially over who it was, one of them probably the biggest upset of all time in that Super Bowl. I would say yes. If we just blind resume his stats, probably would have a little bit more reason for pause. But all the things baked into the equation, he's gonna be in there.
I'll say this: if Arch is a Super Bowl, if Arch is a Hall of Famer, then and he's generational, he will have to take the route that Eli went, and he had to play really well in big games. But I don't think he's ever going to be the guy to light it up like Peyton Manning. My bad. Go ahead, Sam.
No, I have this debate with people all the time, especially like being here in New York. Is he going to make the Hall of Fame? Yes. Eventually he will get into the Hall of Fame. Do I think he's a Hall of Famer? No. Eli Manning played, 16 seasons? He made the playoffs 6 times, led the league in interceptions 3 times, was never all pro, only made, 4 Pro Bowls in those 16 years? And that's the Pro Bowl. Like, he won those titles and he was the Super Bowl MVP, but there are a couple quarterbacks out there who got 2 Super Bowl titles who aren't in the Hall of Fame. One of them is a Giants quarterback in Phil Simms, who I think if you put Phil Simms in this era of NFL football, he'd probably be putting up those same type of numbers that Eli was. I think he is a product of a passing league. And I think that if his name was Eli Williams and he played for the Jacksonville Jaguars and they won 2 Super Bowls, we're probably not having this conversation, to be completely honest with you. But because his name is Eli Manning and he played in New York, it's a whole different conversation for him. So he'll be in the Hall of Fame. He's not in my Hall of Fame.
That's fair enough.
But I can see Arch, you know, depending on the situation, because situation matters. I can see Arch being a really good player in the NFL, but that's to be determined. I personally think he won't leave next year. I think the Mannings are 4-year guys. They want to be in school. They want to see you fully develop. And he's not hurting for money. So I can see Arch staying in Texas. But another guy who's a presumptive first-round pick, right now he may be the number 1 overall pick if next year's draft started today, Garrett Nussmeier over at LSU. Struggled with turnovers and consistency last year, but year 2 under Brian Kelly always seems to garner some success. Will Nussmeier fulfill his potential? Will he be the number 1 pick in next year's draft? Can he possibly be the best quarterback in the SEC? And I'm going to go with Duke on this one, and we're going to flip the coin here. And you are going to take the positive.
I say yes, because one, he's got cannon for an arm, got a prototypical size. You've seen him perform well in big games. Turnovers are sometimes can be a bit of jitters and a lack of experience. Sometimes junk defenses get thrown at you, especially when you're scoring in bunches. And those are turnover. That was a good word to say for turnover, like acceptors. Man, I'm looking for a better word than that. Generators. Boom. Those are turnover generators. And so when I look at the turnovers, I kind of look at them with an asterisk, because when you look at some of them, how many of those turnovers or did he throw in the 50-50 situations because of the receivers that he had? How many of those turnovers do you feel like, you know what, if he just doesn't trust his arm as much as he did last year, then you know what, maybe he could have taken the check down, and that comes with maturity. But I think when it comes as far as tools, they got him ranked number 1 as a reason. It ain't because they just like it. He got a cool last name. I mean, Nussmeier, I mean, come on now, bro. Like, maybe if he's selling cookies, but outside of this point, like, just based on football, yeah, I think it's his traits what make you feel like that Nussmeier could be the presumptive number 1 overall pick. Like you said, year 2 in that offense. And I think what you'll see out of this year is they're going to flash his legs a little bit more. And I think that's what really made Jaden Daniels dangerous. And I think if you just really just put on that film of Jaden Daniels taking the rushing yards when they're there, when they were available, that's where you really see those LSU quarterbacks really succeed. And I think now that's what you'll see my man Nussmeier do this year. So shout out to him, man. And if I'm a cookie company, that's my NIL guy.
All right. Can you take the negative here?
Yeah, I think, you know, for me, when it comes with Garrett Nussmeier, it's just like, I'm still going to lean with, you know, I just need to see him take care of the ball a little bit more. It's like, you know, Duke said, like, Garrett Nussmeier has like a cannon for arm, he has a rocket launcher, but like the instructions are sold separately. That's like how I view him. He's just like, you know, awesome physical tools, but you really don't know what you're gonna get. He's like, you know, obviously got the arm talent there, but you know, there are moments where, you know, saying he kind of turned into the captain of the crash out crew. And we saw that, you know, many times last fall. So I just wonder, is that going to rear its ugly head again? LSU probably had the best transfer portal class in the country in terms of what they were able to, you know, retain as far as the coaching, all these things, the LSU second-year jump, all of these things point to it. But I just need to see Garrett Nussmeier be a little bit more under control with the ball. Also, something else that has been an underrated aspect of why LSU hasn't been able to take that next step. One of them obviously is because of defense, but they really just haven't had a running game under Brian Kelly. I'm still concerned about if that's going to be the case this year. Jaden Daniels was able to master that because he was just awesome running the ball. Last year, they didn't have that same presence. A lot of the offense fell on Garrett Nussmeier's shoulders, and maybe that's why there were so many turnovers. Maybe that's why he felt like he had to do so much, was because he didn't feel like he had enough on offense to supplement those other things. Is that going to be the same case this year, even though they have awesome receivers and he has the arm talent? So I would just say needing to see him take care of the ball more, and then the still perceived absence of a consistent running game give me a little bit of reason for pause for LSU's offense. But going back to the conversation about Alabama, this is the team that I feel like is best positioned for quarterback now into the future, because one of the most underrated gets for LSU in the portal was Michael Van Buren from Mississippi State, who was awesome as a freshman last year, gave Georgia everything that they could handle when they came to Athens, and walked away from a starting job at Mississippi State to basically learn under Garrett Nussmeier for a year and take over for him a year from now. So when we talk about teams that are best positioned now, you have a projected #1 pick, and then you have somebody who was a proven commodity in terms of just raw talent in the SEC as a freshman, getting a chance to basically take a redshirt year in LSU's system and LSU's offense, and then being able to step into that as a, I guess it would be a redshirt sophomore going into next year. That would be the quarterback situation that I would take above any other in the league. Give me Garrett Nussmeier for this year and Michael Van Buren for next.
All right, Duke, you care to respond to that?
I think the one caveat I had about the quarterback situation was really just the quarterbacks who hadn't played yet. So with Van Buren, both of those guys have played. So I really like, but I agree with Van Buren. I thought that was a wild move, but if you're really just gonna go sit for a year and you're the guy, I think that made a lot of sense, and it helped kind of take the sting away from losing a guy like Bryce Underwood. So and I know we say lose, who we talk about losing a guy who never played for you, but I think we had a guy committed as long as Bryce Underwood. Bryce Underwood was to LSU. It did feel like a loss. So being able to get a guy like that in the transfer portal really helps. But yeah, outside of that, yeah, like I said, man, like crazy arm talent. You know, he had the multiple interceptions against Texas A&M, and all they did was disguise the coverages. He fixes those games. I think Arkansas, Alabama. He has 3 games on there that you want to go back and you say, all right, fix these games, and you could be the #1 overall pick. And I think there's put it like this, he's got the traits to do it if for nothing else.
All right. Another guy with
and
the traits.
And his daddy was a quarterback too, man. Old Doug.
Old Doug Nussmeier.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Another guy with the traits, Lenora Sellers, another projected first-round pick, consistently ranked as one of the top 5 quarterbacks in all of college football. Last season, he almost led them to the college football playoff. Now Mike Shula is the new OC. He's expected to take a huge leap. Can Lenora Sellers be the best quarterback in the conference and maybe the country? We're gonna go back to Dukes here, and you're gonna take the negative on this one.
I just haven't seen. I don't know about the decision making. Just to keep it a buck. I don't know if he has what it takes in order to those same junk coverages that we saw defenses run at Nussmeier, where a quarterback can say, "Oh, where they are stare one." So many times last year with Lenora Sellers, we saw him stare down his primary target, and then just like, he's going to run out of that one, and the covers be bracketed, and he throw an interception. I think when teams start to key in and dropping that extra man in the box just to spy him, how does he deal with that? With the athleticism that goes along in the SEC, I think that he's another quarterback who you can bait in the turnovers, and that's what keeps you from playing in the SEC more than anything. Yeah, we love all of the splash plays. We love the athleticism. We love how strong his arm is. We love to say, hey, man, he's South Carolina's DJ Lagway. But great aesthetic with the goggles, glasses, with it, like we love Sellers, right? But when you just talk about being the top guy in the SEC, there's so many guys, and winning is going to be a part of it. I actually think South Carolina is poised to do some big things because of what they can do on the offensive line and the defensive line. But if I had to take some negatives, I just think it would be his decision making, and I think turnovers are what kill teams in the SEC. So if I had to take a negative on Lenora Sellers based on this exercise, the reason that I would say he wouldn't ascend to the top of the SEC would be his turnovers.
All right, Cam.
All right. Yeah. So I think that's for me, like what I'm going to point to is just him taking a second year jump. I think everything that Duke said was well stated. I just feel like a second year in college is going to bode well for his processing, his decision making, and him just kind of understanding the speed of the game and what he can and can't get away with. I think for him, it's more so about his supporting cast taking a step forward, like Nicholas Harbor potentially being able to be on there. Not so much unstoppable in real life. He has like kind of splash plays, but he's not very consistent. He took off from like running track full time to focus fully on football. I think that was a good thing for him and for the program. I think it bodes well for what their offense can do. Mazeo Bennett is a former 4-star from the upstate of South Carolina who is going to be able to fill a big role. So I like the fact that his supporting cast, I think, around him is going to be a little bit better, a little bit more prepared to kind of help facilitate some of these growing pains that he's going to have. But as far as the athletic traits and all of that, everything is there. So I have confidence in Lenore Sellers to be able to be a strong quarterback, best quarterback in the SEC. A little bit more of a stretch. I think that for him, he could be like an Anthony Richardson with experience. Like when Anthony Richardson came out of Florida, he has all these awesome traits, but he's barely played. And you had questions about his accuracy, his decision making, and all those things. Laura Sellers can be that, but he's going to play many more games. Like he started all of last year, he's going to start all of this year. So I think at the end of the year, we might be looking at him as like a super awesome athlete who could be a high round pick just based off of the traits. But I expect him to be better this year, just based off of him having a little bit more of a year in college. I think Mike Shula as an offensive coordinator is an interesting hire. Obviously, we know we did it with Cam Newton. Now he taking on that role with South Carolina is going to be a storyline to watch. So I like everything about kind of where his development is heading, and just the fact that I think South Carolina's team is going to be a little bit better in terms of being able to support him. And I know I'm on the positive side, but I'll be remiss if I didn't bring up the fact that usually when South Carolina has high expectations, they falter. When they don't have high expectations is when they surprise teams. So these, like, I feel like obviously I'm talking out of both sides of my neck, but that's something that's like kind of concerning me too. It's like, they're kind of like the sexy team, but usually when that happens, they're not exactly apt to living up to those expectations. But I have confidence that Lenore Sellers is going to be a premier player.
All right. Duke, you brought him up. Next guy we're going to talk about is DJ Lagway. Huge freshman year at Florida in those 7 games that he did start, but he dealt with some injuries. Coming into the season, head coach is on the hot seat, and he's already dealing with a couple injuries in spring. There was some speculation on whether or not he may need surgery on that shoulder. But with a healthy DJ Lagway, can Florida contend for the SEC title? Duke, I'm going to start with you again, and you are going to take the negative on this one.
The best ability is availability. But we're saying a healthy DJ Lagway. Just too many young targets. When you got a youth movement at wide receiver, I love what they brought in. You got Trey Brown, who 3rd generation Florida Gator. You got Dallas Wilson, who you plucked out of the high school ranks from Oregon's grasp at the last minute. They say he's like a physical specimen. He has a chance to be one of the greatest ever to don the orange and blue. Running back, you got my man Jaden Ball, straight out of Atlanta from Columbia High School, a hooper that plays running back but really physically dominant. But you got so much youth there. The offensive line, so much youth. Like you really want to surround him with more high-level talent on his level. And he was the guy. In his recruiting class, it was him, and it was LJ McCray on defense. You didn't see the blue chippers around him. Part of the reason this coach was on the hot seat was because of the recruiting rankings, was because of you're not really bringing in these classes that Florida is used to. So now when you're head and shoulders above the guys, when you talk about pedigree that you're around, it can affect your play. So if I were to take the negative of DJ Lagway, I'm not sure if they surrounded him with enough experienced talent for him to be successful.
All right, Kenny, you on the positive.
Yeah, I think well-stated points. I think, what I would say to contend with that is just like a lot of these guys that are young got a chance to play last year, got a chance to get thrown into the fire. So while they're young in terms of their age, they're probably a little bit older in experience. So I think that will bode well for them. I just believe that DJ Lagway, just talent-wise, could end up being maybe the best quarterback in the country at the end of this season in terms of just, what he's able to do, throwing the ball, running the ball, his just ability, and the floor that he raised Florida to when he was on the field last year cannot be understated. When he was out there on the field, you felt like Florida was in any game that they played. I mean, the Georgia game is a prime example of that. Who knows what happened in that game if he doesn't go down with that injury. So I understand that the injuries are a concern. The fact that he's had multiple injuries in different areas is also a bit concerning. But if he can just stay healthy, and some of these young guys are going to be able to lean a bit more on their experience. And I think Florida is going to, be able to be a viable team. Them contending for the SEC is a tough proposition because their schedule is brutal. But I think even at 9-3 with the right 9 wins, they can be a playoff team. So that's kind of where I would maybe put the bar at, is them being in playoff contention. But a healthy DJ Lagway, I think, is going to be one of, the 10 best players in the country, this year. So I'm banking on him just being able to be healthy and being able to kind of build on some of the things that he had last year. And they are a young team, especially on offense, but they have awesome players in their youth. I think Ball is going to be a breakout candidate this year too. If they can really lean on him running the ball, that's going to give Florida's offense another dynamic. So that would be the reasons why I have confidence.
Okay. I mean, both of you guys are really complimentary of DJ Lagway. I'm just curious, for those who didn't get a chance to watch him last year, 7 starts that he made, what really jumps off the tape for both of you? Duke, I'll start with you.
Man, athleticism. He's a load to tackle. If he fought, he always falls forward. And that's part of the reason that he may not be able to stay healthy, is because he was able to take that load and that punishment. But when you go back and look at it, was he really able to take that punishment? But when you talk about what jumps off the screen, it's just the fact he can make every throw. And, man, it's almost like a compact Cam Newton when you look at him on the college level. Like, may not be as tall as Cam Newton, but as far as being athletically gifted, to where, if it's quarterback versus linebacker, 9 times out of 10, the linebacker is supposed to win. Well, he's that 1 out of 10 that you might want to put some money on the quarterback.
Yeah, I think, he kind of said it like this. The simplest way that I would say it is, when you're watching him, you're watching something special. Like, you just know it when you see it. Like, you watch him, it's like, this is what it's supposed to look like when we're talking about somebody that's a cut above just like a really good player in college. So I would just say that you know it when you see it. And Florida's going to play some very high leverage games early in the year, so it's going to put him on the spotlight, so people get a chance to see what he's really about. But I just think you just kind of know it when you see it, and you definitely see it when you watch him.
Some names I've seen him compared to: Jordan Love, Josh Allen, Dante Culpepper, young Ben Roethlisberger. High praise. So hopefully he can stay healthy, because I enjoy watching DJ Lagway last year, even though he almost took out Georgia. If he would have stayed healthy again, they probably would have won that.
Yeah.
Sticking with the youth movement, Ole Miss. Now that Jackson Dart is in the NFL, Austin Simmons is stepping in. He has big shoes to fill, but that's nothing new for him. That kid is impressive. We talked about it before we started recording, but he's only 19. He's already graduated college. But the big question for him is, can this Ole Miss offense be just as explosive with him under center? Kenny, we're going to go with you. And flipping the coin here, you are going to take the positive.
Yeah, I think you saw what he did against Georgia a year ago in the rain, no less, dominating in that game. Who he is as just like a raw athlete, easily could be an elite baseball player too. That's not out of the question. But he just kind of has all of the right traits. Everything about his story lends you to believe that this is somebody that's going to be successful. Graduated from high school early, graduated from college early, being able to, be a dual sport athlete, both at a high level, coming in against Georgia in a high pressure, high leverage situation, performing very well in those type of conditions. You just feel like this is somebody that Lane Kiffin is going to have a lot of fun with offensively. Granted, this is going to be pretty much a completely new Ole Miss team. So a lot of this onus is really more so on Lane Kiffin in terms of he's going to be able to cultivate the right offense, but he is one of, if not the best offensive mind in college football. So I do trust him that he's going to be able to build something around Austin Simmons. But the biggest reason that I have optimism for him is really just kind of who he is and his path, and the limited action that we've seen of him lets us know that he is not afraid of the moment. And he is somebody that's going to be able to step in with a full off season and be able to come in and have some success. He learned a lot from Jackson Dart, I'm sure. So I'm high on him as a prospect into the future. Is he somebody that's going to be, an NFL prospect in this year? Maybe, maybe not. But as a long-term starting play for Ole Miss, somebody with a ton of upside.
All right, Duke, on you.
Yeah, if I were to take the negatives on Austin Simmons, it would probably be Lane Kiffin. Reason being that Lane Kiffin is such a cerebral guy. He's a game planning guy, someone who believes in himself more than he believes in anything. I mean, I want somebody to love me the way that Lane Kiffin loves Lane Kiffin, and I think that sometimes that could be so that's cool, right? But let's say that when you have a guy who's as athletically talented as Austin Simmons is, will you be able to adjust your offense to fit his talents so you can get the most out of him? Or would you be stubborn enough to say, you know what, well, this isn't working. Well, let me get to another level of the offense. Or are you just going to keep hammering that nail into the dirt and without progress? And I think that if there's any coach in the country that could do that, Lane Kiffin could. Now, do I think Lane Kiffin would? No, but for the sake of the exercise, definitely if there was something that I thought that would prevent Austin Simmons from reaching his full potential, it would probably be having an offensive coordinator that wouldn't be willing to adjust based on his skill set.
All right, cool. So just gonna kind of move on from there because I'm a big fan of Austin Simmons. I want to see him succeed, but this situation is the one I alluded to earlier, where I felt like a guy could have used the union or a CBA. Um, that you guys already know what happened with Nico and Tennessee, kind of left him in a weird situation. He leaves in the middle of spring. Jake Merklinger and George McIntyre were supposed to compete for that job. But then the Vols landed for Joey Aguilar in the portal. You guys know Aguilar played at App State the last 2 seasons, transferred to play at UCLA. But because Nico ended up with the Bruins, Aguilar hit the portal again. And Aguilar just got to campus on Monday. So he had just over 100 days before the Vols faced Syracuse in their first game. And now he has to make that jump from playing in the Sun Belt to the SEC. So will Aguilar be the star quarterback that Tennessee needs, or will the Vols regret letting Nico leave for UCLA? And we're gonna go back to Kenny here, and you are going to take the negative.
Okay. Do I think that Tennessee is going to regret Nico leaving? I would say, even though I have the negative, I would say no, just because of the precedent that it was going to set for their team and potentially around the sport. So they had to stand on business, though. It was an unfortunate situation. I definitely think they're taking a step back in terms of talent at quarterback. I know Nico wasn't the most consistent quarterback a year ago, but just in terms of athletic ability, trajectory, all those things, you'd rather have Nico than Aguilar. I do think that he was the best option available to maintain a floor for Tennessee. But if we're just looking at this offense on its face, I mean, this is a completely new unit from a year ago. Tennessee, I know their reputation is a high-flying passing team, but they really like to run the ball. And they have to replace Dylan Sampson, who was the catalyst of their offense a year ago. Their receiving core was decimated in the portal. There's going to be a lot of young guys that are going to be asked to step up. Mike Matthews is a former 5-star who has all of the talent, but we need to see it on the field. Chris Brazell was somebody that transferred in a year ago and was a part of the rotation, but they're going to need him to really take a step up. So I just look at this Tennessee offense with at least what we know right now, not a proven dominant player on the outside, unproven run game, brand new quarterback with, like you said, 100 days. If they don't go with him, they're going to lean on 2 guys that have never played in a game. This is not an ideal situation, even though people are going to pat them on the back and say that they did the right thing. I would agree with them, but that, as we know, doing the right thing can come at a cost. So I'm looking at this offense, and on its face, I am not confident that this is going to be a group that is going to be able to sustain what they have put on the field the last couple of years. Aguilar, again, experience. He's been in games. He's put up good numbers. And like I said, it was the best that Tennessee was able to do on short notice. But I do think that this is an offense, when I just look at it on paper, that is not on the same level as it was a year ago, not just because of the quarterback, but because of the supporting cast. So for those reasons, I have skepticism about this offense.
What's the positive here at Tennessee?
Yeah, I'm gonna go with the fact of Josh Heupel. That same belief that Lane Kiffin, if Lane Kiffin is number 1 and believe in his offense, then Josh Heupel is number 2. You look at what he's been able to do ever since he's been the head guy, all the way back to McKenzie Milton, back at UCF. That offense presents so many problems because of how far they get out on the hashes, and then they basically have option routes at each level, at each receiver. Damn near, they've got plays where everybody's running an option route, and they literally just take what the defense gives you, and that creates problems. So when you've got a guy, when you say, you know what, look, when you see this guy, if he's playing off, throw it quickly, please. Throw the stop. And hey, if he's pressing, throw the go. And outside of that, we're gonna run the ball. And I think that's one of the offense that gives defenses troubles. It gives defenses trouble. Excuse me, I said troubles like I'm back in the 30s, but like it gives the defenses trouble because there's so many options there for the offense, and the quarterback doesn't have to be perfect. Like when you look at the quarterbacks like that recently that Tennessee's had that have been successful, nobody just blew you away with their arm talent when it came to accuracy. Now Joe Milton had a rocket, but he didn't have the exact, it wasn't what you really wanted in that offense. Not what you wanted, but you didn't see his best. We may see the best version of Joe Milton in the NFL. And so as far as for a college quarterback in the college system, somebody who's done well, but last year, threw a lot of interceptions last year, the year before, had a better year in Aguilar. I think this could be the steadying force that he needs in the offense that is set up for guys to say, hey, look, we're going to take a little bit of the thinking out of it, and we're going to put you in a position to succeed. And one thing about it, Josh Heupel did not tell Nico to kick rocks because he thought he couldn't win with anybody who was out there. So by being able to bring in a guy who's played at the collegiate level, who may not get spooked by 100,000 fans at your own stadium when things aren't going the best, I think Aguilar does have a chance to be successful.
How difficult is that leap going from the Sun Belt to the SEC with no spring ball, literally just 100 days on campus with your guys?
I mean, I think, of course, I think it's difficult, but I mean, at the end of the day, it's a part of it now. Rules of engagement. He didn't have a spring, but I think there are things that you can do to get guys acclimated. I think that Josh Heupel is going to take every liberty and has taken every liberty that he probably could in order to get him acclimated as fast as possible. And I think that is a heavy lift. Like, just to keep it a buck, that's a lot to ask, especially without having a spring. But I think having a veteran guy will be more capable, especially when you put the offensive line talent that you put around him. Even a guy like David Sanders, who we look at as being one of those quote unquote generational guys to protect your blind side. I think that's something that if I'm Aguilar, I will look forward to in converse of being spooked by the situation that you're in.
Kenny, any response to that?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a tall leap, which is, again, like why I would have a little reason for concern. Like, let's say they had Dylan Sampson for another year. It's like, yeah, you're bringing in a new quarterback, but you still have this awesome running back and a good run game to be able to stabilize those things. I just think that him being able to have to come in, earn the respect of his teammates, galvanize the group, learn the offense, all of those things in 100 days is going to be a tall task, especially when you have a marquee opponent like Syracuse in the first game. It's not like they're going to be able to open up against the FCS team and kind of like ease into it. They're going to be off the bat in a pretty high leverage spot. So tall task, not something that I think is impossible, obviously, for somebody that has a lot of experience, but it is hard not to look at this situation and say that Tennessee is going to stay status quo after what happened, at least for this year.
All right.
Man, Nico wasn't even all that last year, though, bro. Like, it ain't like,
He wasn't.
It ain't.
But he also had Dylan Sampson. So
I mean, Dylan Sampson was cold, but man, I feel like he was also a product of what you do too. When you look at their offense, it's specialized. They literally, like, they're taking men out the box, like, because when they go forward wide, they are going as far as the football field will allow. So as long as you can run the ball in the box, you won't be the same pressure. Like, you can't run a slot guy, you can't run a buck that you drop it in the coverage to help and run support. Like, you just can't. So I think if that's the caveat, then I think Tennessee is more well prepared to kind of buck that trend than anyone else.
All right, we'll move on to Mizzou. Their quarterback room was looking a little different than last year. Brady Cook's in the league. Drew Pine transferred to Bowling Green. They brought in former Penn State backup Bo Prabula, who didn't want to sit another year under Drew Aller. So he's in Mizzou now, and he's the overwhelming favorite to win the job. But Sam Horn also has all the potential in the world. But Horn is also a pitcher for Mizzou baseball. He's recovering from Tommy John surgery. So my question is, which one of these guys is going to end the season as a starter? Kenny, will go to you. And you got the head, so you're going to take Bo Prabula. Make the case for Bo.
Yeah, I think just somebody that was one of the most sought-after quarterbacks in the portal, somebody that could have, ended up at a lot of different places and had a chance to start. Somebody who's been in Penn State's offense and was somebody that was highly regarded in the program. I know James Franklin and those guys didn't want to lose him. Obviously, when Drew Aller decided to come back, it just kind of forced his hand to enter the transfer portal. But had Drew Aller entered the NFL, I think that they would have been fine with Bo Prabula starting for Penn State this year. So I think he's somebody that just needed an opportunity. He has the requisite skill set. He has the athleticism. He's going to go to a place in Missouri where they have kind of built out a foundation for being a competitive team in the SEC. They're going to have to replace a lot of spots, but Eli Drinkwitz is a good coach. I think he has belief in his system. I think his system has been proven over multiple years to be pretty successful. Missouri's sustained a little bit of success over the last couple of years in the SEC. So I just think with Bo Prabula, who he is, having a chance to go through spring as the clear number one, as you mentioned, Sam Horn and his injury and his recovery, I think those things bode well for Bo Prabula. Also, Missouri's schedule is very manageable. So if he's just able to go in there and be a stable guy and Missouri is winning games, there's not going to be a reason to rock the boat. So those things considered, I think Bo Prabula is in a position to take this job and run with it.
All right, Duke, make the case for Sam Horn.
Man, Sam Horn is a guy that if he's not getting it done with his arm, he can do it with his legs. 6'4", he's a low, 220 pounds, swagged out. If I ain't mistaken, he used to throw the ball to Travis Hunter, so he's swagged out. How many quarterbacks do you know with number 21? We are going with all BS right here. I mean, anything that goes along with it, we don't have any stats to talk about. I didn't see him in spring ball, but if I had to make a case for it, I just think he's swagged out. He low-key from the A. You know what I'm saying? Like the boy, like everybody really deal with him. His brother comes from athletic family. His brother plays at Kennesaw. These boys really represent Atlanta in the metro area. So if I just had to BS through an answer to say why I think Sam Horn could be the starter over Bo Prabula, then first of all, bro, it's easier to say Sam Horn. So you got to think the people that's around him are going to be able to call him like, hey, bro, like come throw. Man, I don't really know Bo name like that or Prabula. Call Sam Horn, bro. Horn, bro. What's up, Horn? Yeah. So yeah, that is my absolutely asinine take on that one, but I'm standing by it.
It's all vibes. Hey, I'm with it.
All vibes. I mean, by every metric, I mean, Bo Prabula should be the starter here. He should end the season as a starter. But everybody talks about how much potential Sam Horn has. It's just that, the Tommy John injury kept him out last year, still recovering from that. But he's been in the system this is going on 3 seasons now. So he knows the offense. And I think that might give him a little bit of an advantage. But we'll put a pin in that. Move on to another transfer quarterback out in Kentucky, Zach Calzada. It's the latest transfer to be the starter. The Brock Vandegrift experiment didn't really work out too well, but Calzada is the 7th-year senior who's previously played for Texas A&M and Auburn and Incarnate Word. So does Mark Stoops finally have his guy? Like, expectations are really low. I'm going to go to Duke on this one. Since I know he was at Auburn for a year, didn't see the field, but you'll take the negative on this.
Yeah, I mean, bro, like sometimes, man, you can't. Hey, man, listen, man. And I don't mean no disrespect to the kid, dog. But man, listen. Put it like this: if I was in my 7th year of rapping, and I hadn't had a single, and I was putting a lot of money in my rap career, and I hadn't had a single leave, not even the city of Atlanta. I mean, my neighborhood, my subdivision. You would probably tell me, hey, dog, this might not be it. So, when I think about Zach Calzada in the SEC, man, I'm like, hey, man, Kentucky really struck out, dog, in a couple of places, and I don't mean that, man, listen, man, these are kids, dog, and it's hard for me to talk about it.
He in his 7th year, bro. He like 24. He's not a kid no more.
Bro, he's not. All right, listen, bro. Hey, buddy, look. I'm taking the kid gloves off. You don't do it this year, bro. Don't ask for nothing else. Don't ask for no more. Don't ask for no exception. I don't care how this season go, bro. This is it.
Yeah.
You feel me? So yeah, man. I don't think he's the guy that everybody's just jumping for joy when they say, "Hey, man, who did y'all get at quarterback?" This team that got this team, and they got this team, and then somebody's like, "Boy, we got that boy Zach Calzada." Nobody was like, no, that did not happen, bro. Like, it's not going to happen. Like, so Man, I mean, shout out to Zach Calzada, man. Like, you know, first of all, if I do have to say something I'm proud of him about, man, is being resilient. But yeah, man, that's about the long and the short of it, dog.
All right, Kenny.
Y'all told me to be negative.
All right, here's what I say about Zach Calzada on the positive. First of all, I know it was a long time ago, but he did beat Alabama. So, you know what I'm saying? And it wasn't like he got carried to that when he had 3 touchdowns in that game. I understand we're going on 4 years ago, but it did happen. You know what I'm saying? We can't take it off the board. So he has been in some big games and he has played in some big arenas. Also, a positive, he's not really coming up behind much, right? Like there isn't a lot that he has to do to supersede what was done, previously. But he has some good years at Incarnate Word. So I think that I've seen, improvement in his completion percentage, his touchdown to interception ratio. Granted, a lower level of competition, but Incarnate Word plays good football. We obviously know what they did with Cam Ward. So I do think there's an opportunity for him to come in and at least stabilize the situation for a year. So those will be the things that I'll point to for Calzada. He's experienced. He's at least had some experience at multiple levels, whether that was at A&M several years ago or the last 2 years at Incarnate Word. And the bar is not very high. So I do think that he's going to be able to come in and stabilize the situation. But I will say for Mark Stoops, it is time to find a quarterback out of high school and develop him.
Yeah. I don't know how you can keep going through the portal and it not working out for you. And you just not – I don't know if they're not recruiting quarterbacks out of high school, if he's just trying to find stopgap guys. Kentucky just seems like a team that always has a personnel to be competitive. It's not like they're not well coached. They just don't have the guy. Haven't found the guy yet. And I don't think, like you said, it's time to recruit a guy out of high school.
They like going back to the NIL conversation, like seriously, like Kentucky needs to take like $3 million and go buy a quarterback out of high school. Even if it's not the highest level of a Jared Curtis or whatever, like somebody who's a top 10 ranked quarterback in the country, take millions of dollars and throw the book at him and tell him, look, you can come and be this revolutionary player for our program. That's a team that I can't believe is not utilizing as much NIL money as they can to go get a quarterback. Maybe it's just because the basketball influence is so heavy, but that's what I would be doing if I was Mark Stoops, is taking an asinine amount of money and throwing it at a high-level high school quarterback and just rolling with him for the next 3 years. If nothing else, that will buy you more job security.
You're right. I don't think Mark Stoops is a bad coach either. I just think
no, definitely not.
The quarterback situation has just been atrocious. Like the last however long, honestly, it's been terrible. And speaking of bad quarterback situations, we already talked about Michael Van Buren leaving Mississippi State. But Blake Shapen is back for another season. He was off to a hot start those first 4 games before that shoulder injury ended his season. Can he bring Mississippi State to a bowl game this year if he stays healthy? Kenny, we'll start with you, and you'll take the negative on this.
Good luck to you, Duke. I mean, Blake Shapen has been in big games again. Like, I know it was, some time ago, but he did lead Baylor to a Big 12 championship in a game when Oklahoma State was a win and get into the playoffs. I believe they were 11-1. They were number 5 in the country. It was a win and in situation. Baylor were underdogs, and Blake Shapen led them to a win. So he's been in big games. He's a championship winning quarterback. He's been through some injuries. So he was the best that Jeff Lebby could do in this situation of trying to bring in a quarterback. I do think that in terms of them making a bowl game, it's going to be near impossible just because Mississippi State is like, they are, in college football now, like we see the small teams as like feeder schools for like the big schools, right? Like the FCS and the Drupa 5s are like feeder programs for the bigger schools. That's what Mississippi State is to SEC teams and the Power 5 teams. Anybody who was a great player for Mississippi State last year, particularly on offense, is now about to go be a great player on another offense at a bigger school in the SEC. So decimated roster. I do think Jeff Lebby's a good coach. I think he's recruited fairly well. I believe the recruiting class was in the 30s last year. So he is going to, I think, eventually get Mississippi State to a level of respectability, but there are just too many factors in terms of a lack of talent and personnel for me to think that Blake Shapen can elevate them to a bowl level team, even if he does have requisite experience. So not so much about Blake Shapen as a quarterback. I'm sure Duke is going to get into the positives about maybe all the other quarterbacks that they have, but just as a team, there's not enough for me there to think that he can elevate them to 6 wins.
Damn, well, you know, when you go back to let's just go back to football, high school football. You can even go to video game football. Usually the teams that give you trouble are the teams that go fast, don't allow you to get set up, and they throw it all the way around the field, or they take all the time and they run like a wishbone offense that you just can't stop. But it's usually those two offenses. Well, Jeff Lebby is the previous. He's the former. He's just going to throw the ball all around the field. He's going to throw it a lot. He's going to throw it often. Blake Shapen was 8 touchdowns, 1 pick before he left last year. Now, they lost one out of what did he play? 5 games. They lost 1 out of 4 or something like that. They only won one of the games that he played in. But I think they had a lot less to do with him than they had to do with what's around him. So if you can galvanize guys, take advantage of some of the teams that it may not be as good on the schedule, catch a few teams sleepwalking, get the cowbells going louder and louder, give out more cowbells, free cowbells, cowbell NILs. You know, like I think there's a way for you to get to the playoffs with Blake Shapen. And like you said, Blake Shapen been around, he's been around the block a few times. This is the perfect offense for him, similar to what he ran at Baylor. So, yeah, I think just based off experience and who he is and how long he's been around, you can find a way to get 6 wins, which will get you to a bowl game.
Yeah, 6 wins. According to Kenny, it's going to be a tall task. So.
It is. And if it's not Blake Shapen, they do got, Luke Cromahawk, former highly rated guy from Florida State, was a disastrous year, but he's on the fold. Cavante Taylor's a super athletic quarterback, so they got options.
Ooh, he the one.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I think if we're talking about like him as a long-term option, I think Mississippi State again is going to get a level 2 respectability. But just this year, everything that they lost, it's a tall task. But I do think that Jeff Lebby is cut to do it.
Yeah. But if anybody, that's the one on that roster for sure. How you say Luke last name again?
Cromahawk.
Man, listen, when I was working at On 3, man, his last name kicked my ass for a year straight, buddy. Man, out of Savannah. I know exactly what you're talking about. Man, please. Yep.
All right, next on the list is Vandy and Diego Pavia. He might be the best quarterback in the conference that no one's really talking about. He's been in headlines for suing the NCAA. Got another year of eligibility. Led Vandy to a bowl win. They upset Alabama last year. What's the ceiling for Diego Pavia and Vanderbilt? And we're going to start with Duke. And you are going to take the negative on this one.
Man, bro, like, if I'm going to take the negative about Pavia, it's like, first of all, the Vanderbilt story was cute for a year, but, bro, bro, like, it's not, it ain't that. All right. Second of all, Pavia, like, yes, bro, but like, have you spent as much time in the playbook as you've had the courtroom? At the end of the day, it's like, all right, you got an extra year, but you could have took the extra year to something. You took it right back to Vandy. Now I'm questioning your decision making. Like, that man got an extra year and went straight back to Vandy. So yeah, at the end of the day, it's like, shout out to the Commodores, man, but they are an academic institution. There's nothing wrong with that. We support academics here in the rec league, but since we're in a rec league, like, bro, like, and you cut up last year, no disrespect, but you really had that year where you were supposed to go get you a bag from somewhere else. But, like true Vandy fashion, you went to court, became a lawyer, and you went right back to Vanderbilt. Like, the folks ain't even have a stadium for, like, it just was crazy, dog. So, yeah, man, based on questionable decision making, that's why I'm not sure if Vandy can go to the next level under Diego Pavia.
All right, Kenny, what you got, man?
Yeah, I'm banking on the continuity here. Like, we're talking about ceilings. Like, is Vanderbilt going to compete for an SEC championship or anything like that? No, but can they make a bowl game again? I think so. I think that there's a requisite amount of experience returning on the offensive side of the ball. Highlighted by like Eli Stowers at tight end. They're replacing a lot on offense. But all of these guys that they're adding via the transfer portal are going to stay are all kind of guys who are seniors or graduate students. So a lot of experience, even though there's a bunch of new guys. But I think, Pavia just kind of coming back again, being up under Clark Lee and, Jerry Kill, who was his offensive coordinator, that continuity, I think it bodes well enough for Vanderbilt to be able to stabilize what they did a year ago and repeat it. So are they going to be able to take a step forward and maybe win like 8 games? That's a bit of a stretch because, to Duke's point, they're not sneaking up on anybody this year. It's funny to say that a team like Alabama would have Vanderbilt circled on their schedule, but when Vanderbilt comes to Tuscaloosa this fall, it ain't going to be like it was last fall. They're going to have their full attention. They're going to have a lot of teams full attention. So they're going to get teams better shot. But I do think that, with Pavia and the experience that they're returning, they're going to be able to go back to a bowl game this year.
How do y'all feel about the Diego Pavia, Johnny Manziel comparisons? There's a lot of them last year.
They both played quarterback in the SEC. There's something to it. I mean, I guess they're both trailblazers in their own way. But Johnny Manziel, at the end of the day, was still picked in the first round of the NFL draft. I don't know if Diego Pavia is on any draft boards. I'd have to look some up, but maybe I'm not familiar enough with his game. Let's reconvene at our next episode, and after I watch some more tape, I'll be able to give you a better analysis. But, they're both quarterbacks. They're both trailblazers in their own way. They both beat Alabama, so I can see it.
According to Duke, they both have questionable decision making. So.
And Buddy beat the whole NCAA and went right back to Vanderbilt. Like, what? Got the extra year and went right back in the folks like, back. Right now, buddy.
Maybe there's something to be said about being, a transformational Vanderbilt football. Maybe that's something that he might be able to live off of after football is done.
Hey, that boy Pavia said, going back to the hood with this one.
Someone Skip Bayless is happy as hell Diego Pavia back, bro. I'm telling you.
Man, that's crazy. My sister went to Vanderbilt too, man. I know she's going to be on me about that one.
The GPA boosters are the SEC, bro. We need them.
Yeah, for sure, man. Yeah, we're going back to oh, man.
All right, man. Marcel Reed at Texas A&M back for another year. He took over last year.
Damn, how many quarterbacks in the SEC?
We down 2 more. Just 2 more.
We can take that out. My bad.
Marcel Reed back for another year. Redshirt freshman took over last year, played pretty well. Now he's the undisputed face of the program. A&M added some pass catchers for Reed. So I guess the question is can he elevate, Texas A&M and how does he respond to the pressure? Duke, we're gonna go with you, and you are gonna take the positive on this one.
Yeah, man, I like Reed, man. You beat out another quarterback who's gonna be a starter. I think Whiteman Connor went to Houston, I think. Yeah, like he went to Houston. I like Marcel Reed game, man. Played in some big games. And what Mike Elko, what I like about him is it's old school football to a certain extent, right? Where you go play defense, you're gonna be good up front, you're gonna run the ball, you're gonna protect your quarterback. And when the quarterback has to make a plus play, you got a guy like Marcel Reed that when the play breaks down, it's like, bro, you really gotta account for him. And having a guy that you gotta have to account for, like you do, Marcel Reed, in the run game, even when you aren't going RPO, even when you aren't going read option or quarterback power, you still gotta account for him because you really don't want to play man against them because once everybody gets their back turned, he can break it for 60 to 70 yards. So I think there's a lot as far as being one of the true dual threat quarterbacks in the conference where, it's not just quote unquote sneaky athleticism like the dude, a real athlete, and he can really throw the ball. So I think Marcel Reed being that true dual threat, he's going to be able to hopefully play his way up into the minds of some NFL teams for the year after next. But for what he did last year, I think you got to consider Texas A&M to be one of the premier teams returning that you would think could get to the next level based on everything around him and Marcel Reed being the icing on the cake.
All right, can you take the negative on Marcel Reed?
Yeah, I think it's just a matter of him continuing to develop, and then I think just like the receiving core, really young, really not a lot of continuity there. They were able to get some really good players. Mario Craver from Mississippi State. So going back to that conversation about if you had a good player at Mississippi State, they were playing for a higher leverage team. Casey Concepcion was somebody who did some good things in North Carolina State, is now over there as one of the premier players in the portal. Terry Busey was a former 5-star who's in their receiving core as well, but just not a lot of experience and reps with Marcel Reed specifically. So I have questions about how those guys are going to gel. What's going to happen with the run game as far as are they going to be able to have a balanced offense? Those will probably be my two main concerns. But in terms of him just as like a prospect with a high ceiling, I do think all of those traits are there. But I want to see him be able to take that next step about just him being a pure passer in the SEC, just being able to drop back and consistently be able to hang in there and make those plays and not rely so much on using his legs and making those kind of like backyard football plays, because is he going to be able to play within the confines of an offense is basically kind of what I'm getting at, in addition to building chemistry with some receivers. While talented, not a lot of reps there. So that's what I'll be watching for. I think the Notre Dame game early year is going to be a really big data point for that.
All right. Last quarterback here in the SEC at Arkansas, Taylor Green, one of 6 returning starting quarterbacks in the conference. He was actually pretty productive last year, but we've heard some conflicting reports coming out in the last couple of days. Some saying that he could play his way up into first-round contention for the NFL draft. Some saying that they damn near had a mutiny in the receiver room because of how inaccurate he was. So the question is, can he take the leap in year 2 of Bobby Petrino's system? And Kenny, we're going to start with you, and you're going to take the positive here.
Yeah, I think just making on him kind of just another year in the system and being able to kind of build on some of the things they did last year. I mean, they did beat Tennessee. They did have some good performances. I think that this thing with the receiving course is going to take a little bit of time. One thing about Arkansas, they're just like a turnover factory in terms of like their players. It seems like every year in this transfer portal era, they've had 30 players come in, 30 players coming out. It's hard to build that continuity when you have that much roster turnover. So that's a reflection of what Sam Pittman is doing with that program. But I do think that once they have a summer and a fall camp of building that chemistry, because if you were to look at Arkansas's projected depth chart, these are pretty much all guys that were somewhere else a year ago. So it's going to take some time to build that chemistry, but I do have faith that Taylor Green is still going to be a productive player in the SEC. Bobby Petrino is going to have to continue to hone his skill, refine his decision-making, maybe even like tweak the offense to make things a little bit simpler so him and the receivers can get on one accord. But that's what I would say is I think they just need a little bit more time to build that chemistry. And if they do that, then Arkansas is going to be a viable offense this fall. So that would be my positive tips on that.
Yeah, I think you can't build a chemistry with the receiver room because they all left. Andrew Armstrong is gone, leading receiver, over 1,000 yards. I think he was leading. It may have been the leading receiver in the SEC, if I'm mistaken. But if he wasn't, he was in top 2, top 3. Andrew Armstrong is gone. He was underutilized last year, even with how much he did get the ball. Then you have a guy like Tyrone Broden, 6'7", 4.3 40, could not get the ball. And then your best player, who was your highest draft pick, Isaac Tesla, was basically your best special teamers last year. So when it comes to, I just don't know if they're going to be able to do it. I think he's best when you put him in an RPO system. Bobby Petrino literally was just like, nah, you're going to throw this ball. Like, nah, that's like, bro, no, you're going to throw it. I think he was better when you put him in situations to run the ball. And I'm being negative because I do think Arkansas is going to surprise some people this year. But when you're forced to be negative about it, that's what I will point out. And have some really questionable turnovers last year. You're like, bro, what you throwing the ball, bro? Like, some of that happened last year. So, yeah, based on the exercise once again, I would say lack of experience in a wide receiver room, lack of continuity because you also lost your number 1 tight end as well. So it's just not a lot of receiver options. Lost your number 1 running back. So you just lost a ton from last year. No continuity in that offense. So it's basically starting over. Even though the quarterback is back, everybody else is almost a new cast, including I think you got 3 new starters on the offensive line as well. Like, we got to get the stats on that. How many starters return to Arkansas's offense? It might be 3.
Yeah, if we're going by this website called Our Lads, they would have 4. And then if you were to look at their two deep, probably have 7. They probably have 7 returners on their two deep. Everybody else is a transfer or a true freshman. So
a lot of turnover.
Not man, what?
But you can't teach traits, and that's something that Taylor Green has. 6'6", 230, big arm, can run the ball. It's hard to not like him when you just watch, like just watching him physically. But I mean, according to his receivers last season, they just weren't. He wasn't it. So I guess we'll see. But that'll wrap it up for Heads or Tails. You guys have any final thoughts on the quarterbacks of the SEC? Anything else you want to get off your chest? Something you may not have been able to say? I know you guys took a lot of positives, a lot of negatives.
Yeah, I mean, I just think that the one thing I'll say is I think that the reason why the SEC has taken a step back in the last couple of years and the Big Ten has ascended has been the quarterback play. You look at some of the draft picks that they've had in the Big Ten that have correlated to their national championship teams, whether that's Will Howard or C.J. Stroud or J.J. McCarthy. Drew Aller is an emerger. The SEC has taken a step back in quarterback play the last couple of years. So I think that's kind of like the great determiner. So I think that with the teams that we've broken down, a lot of things to be positive for, but a lot of uncertainty again. So I think that we're maybe looking at another year of SEC play where it's like a lot of these teams are closer to each other, and maybe not so much because of like the depth of the conference, but just because the quarterback play hasn't been as strong as it has been in past years. So that's really what I'm going to be looking for this year is it going to be an improved year, or is it going to be another year where we perceive the play to be down?
Duke, what about you?
No, I'm good, bro. Like I don't know, dog. Like I just feel like the SEC is like, when it comes to quarterback play, I just feel like it ain't a whole lot of. I mean, DJ Lagway and Lenore Sellers, I roll with that. Like outside of that, like but as far as just having that guy that we may have seen, hopefully Arch Manning, you just don't have a lot of hope for what the SEC produced top to bottom at the quarterback position. I think it's another down year.
All right. I mean, you gave me your top 2 guys. Can you give me your top 2 guys in the conference, and then just one guy who might really surprise people who may be flying under the radar?
Yeah, I think that my top 2 would be probably Mateer and Nussmeier. I think the guy that's going to surprise is going to be I'll probably say Marcel Reed. He's probably somebody that's not being talked about enough in just like the pantheon of national college football. So I think that he's probably going to be the one that ascends the most. But I would say Mateer and Nussmeier will probably be my top 2.
Or yeah, I mean, I like Lenore Sellers at South Carolina, but like you said, South Carolina expectations don't necessarily mix. I want to love Arch Manning, but something about that last name just speaks to more hype than substance. And similar to you, Kenny, I think Marcel Reed is gonna be pretty good this year, given the opportunity. So looking forward to seeing those guys. But
I think Buddy at Tennessee gonna be straight on the low.
Joey Aguilar?
Yeah, I think he's gonna be all right on the low. And Buddy from Ole Miss. You know what? I take my statement back. SEC is gonna be better this year in quarterback play. Let me take that back. I retract my statement. Now that I think about it, give me the SEC.
Give them the SEC then. I mean, we're looking at first round talent. The SEC got 4 of those guys already that are on the board in the first round. The only other guy who maybe drafted in the first round that's not in the SEC is Drew Aller. So a lot of NFL.
SEC,
yeah, a lot of NFL level talent in the SEC right now.
And that's not even looking at Marcel Reed.
Right.
Probably, yep.
Right.
I know they ain't looking at Jackson Arnold, but I think he gonna ball. And if he don't, Deuce Knight gonna ball. That's who I can't wait to play.
Deuce Knight?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
He one of them.
He might get a chance. He might get a shot. Jackson Arnold don't ball.
Man.
Hey, Hugh Freeze done shown. If you ain't producing, he will give you that hook. So never know. Interesting situation. That might be a recruiting battle that wasn't as highly publicized, obviously, because of Keelan Russell and Bryce Underwood, but one that we might look back on a couple of years from now and say Auburn flipping him was one of the biggest, moves of that class.
Yeah, everybody thought he was so developmental because of his throwing motion and, could he layer the ball? And then he goes into Auburn and it's like, bro, like it's, He ended up being a quarterback competition this spring that nobody was expecting. It's gonna be a lot of people gonna be looking like if he in Baylor, if Jackson Arnold don't come out guns a blazing, it's gonna be people calling for Deuce Knight and for him to at least get snaps, guaranteed.
Well, I mean, in this day and age, you kind of have to. Kind of need him to get snaps.
Yeah, everybody got time.
If he don't, he might hit the portal.
Right.
And somebody throw him a bag.
For sure.
And that Auburn job was a tough gig. I want to say it's one of the toughest jobs in the country.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, your main two teams are Alabama and Georgia.
Right.
Plus everybody else. But that's who you got to – I mean, those are your rivals.
Right.
So not a long leash for any head coach at Auburn. So
every year, them two.
Yep.
I don't think we beat them both since 2017.
Not long leashes for Auburn or LSU, honestly. LSU might be the toughest gig in the country.
Man, they ain't got to play Georgia area.
Yeah, but you got to win that. Even if you do win national championships, you might get fired. So
yeah,
he really is. Like my high school coach, Coach Ward, used to tell us, he was like, I'm like Janet Jackson. You know, what have you done for me lately? That's exactly what LSU is. What have you done for me lately? You can win a national title. 2 years later, you could be out.
That might be a topic for a next episode. What are our 5 toughest jobs, maybe in the SEC or just in the country? 5 toughest places to win consistently or keep your fan base happy.
But this is why I say they so crazy about it, because all that talent in Louisiana, and who are you competing against at a Power 4 level?
Right.
Yeah.
It's all yours.
Right.
Well, now it's national with the money.
Yeah, for sure.
Now it's a national game. But yeah, no, it's a great segue because that kind of wraps up what we have for the show. Had some great takes. Definitely want to keep an eye on what's happening around college football, around NIL, with the commission on college football, the Trump administration. And we're gonna be hearing a lot about a lot of these quarterbacks that we talked about. I wonder if you guys had any favorite takes from the day, anything that like really just kind of stood out for you from each other that you really didn't get a chance to respond to, or just something that you're gonna be thinking about.
I would say this is one stuck out, and this is like probably the main one I get the chance to comment on, but I think would be one of maybe the biggest shifters in the sport was Duke said that Alabama was not going to make the playoff this year. If Alabama does not make the playoff this year, what the ramifications that would have on not only their program but college football, I think would be seismic. I think Kalen DeBoer's job security. What does recruiting look like in the state of Alabama? Duke knows this very well. Auburn kicked Alabama's ass in in-state recruiting last year. If Alabama misses the playoffs again, let's say Auburn takes a step forward, what does that say about the trajectory of Auburn and the trajectory of Alabama? What does that say about who Alabama is as a program in this post-Saban era? There's just so many tentacles off of that point that could affect the sport if it was to happen. So I would say that would be the take that stuck out to me the most.
Man, and I just want to piggyback on that. If that does happen, man, will there ever be a player that will probably be a non-quarterback player that would be worth more in the portal than Ryan Williams?
No.
I can't see it, man. Look, they don't look. That boy wants to play playoff football. They won. He's a winner, and they won everything since he's been little. Like, So actually, I got a real good interview where he talked about that when I was still at 24/7 CBS Sports. We had to check. He had to go to work, man, to check some of your people out, Sammy, and be like, "Hey, man, I need that old Dukes interview with Ryan Williams." But now straight up, like, yeah, it'd be sad, man. And one thing about the state of Alabama is when I talk to people on the inside of Alabama, they say we didn't want a lot of those guys. So we're gonna see. Facts or cap. Well, did you not want them after the girl chose somebody else, or did you really not want them? And if you recruited over their heads, which I think when you look at that recruiting class on a national level, what they brought in some. They really said, you know what, we're gonna recruit with a national imprint and not just in the state of Alabama. Year one, and I would say I think Alabama came in number 3 or number 4 overall ranked, and Auburn was 8. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But I just don't believe in not taking care of home. So we're gonna see how that works out for him.
Yeah. I mean, Kalen DeBoer is obviously not a guy from the South. was an interesting hire. He's an offensive mind. I don't even know if I really know if he's a college guy like through and through, but yeah, that hot seat at Alabama is something else if you don't win, and they might be calling for his job if they don't make the playoff this year.
Might be, man. Please.
Here's what we do know: 9-3 will never be the norm at Alabama ever. And if you're out there thinking like, oh well, Alabama needs to be realistic, whatever, they will fire as many coaches as it takes to find somebody who will not make 9-3 the norm. So they don't miss the playoffs this year. That would be a cataclysmic moment in the sport. And I didn't even think about the Ryan Williams point. That's a great point as well. If he decided to hit the portal, he would definitely be maybe the most sought after player in the portal era, maybe outside of like Caleb Williams, but we already knew where he was going. Like if we're just talking about him just going to whoever, that would be crazy to watch.
Maybe that's something that we can talk about on the next show. We'll talk about, hottest the hardest jobs in the country and what guys could command what kind of money in the portal.
Transfer portal value, and it don't matter if they leaving or not.
Right.
Non-quarterbacks.
Non-quarterbacks usually the most valuable players.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So there you have it, guys. Keep it locked. This is Rec League, respectfully unemployed. Sammy Smith, Philip Dukes, Kennington Lloyd Smith III. Got to say his full name because it's regal.
You did.
It's been cool, man. I want y'all to plug y'all socials before we sign off here.
Yeah, I mean, on Twitter at SkinnyKenny_, on Instagram at Slimington, SLIMMINGTON.
At Dukes D Scoop on Twitter and Instagram, DUKESTHESCOOP.
All right, you can find me at word.smith 2 underscores on Instagram. Y'all don't worry about my Twitter. I don't be tweeting for real anyway. So, but yeah, man, that's Rec League. That's episode 1, man. We appreciate y'all for listening. Keep it locked. We'll be back next week with more. Peace.